twerk, 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 twerk. Ay, 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 go crazy, yeah, yeah. Ay, 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 go crazy. Bro, pass me the rock. I've been moving out the box. Top speed going top. 101 going pop. Getting hot, hot, hot.
Welcome to the Tony Casillas Show. I am the namesake, TC, Tony Casillas, and I am so excited about having my own podcast, and I'm equally excited about who my first inaugural guest is, but I'll get to that later. Each week, I'm going to provide you with interesting guests, whether it's a celebrity, whether it's an athlete, whether it's an American hero, military veteran, whether it's a business entrepreneur, people that are making impact, our first responders, because we know the climate we live in with COVID, man, they've been very impactful to our society. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about an array of different things during our interview. And trust me, I may ask a lot of really, really interesting questions, but this is what this show's about. We're going to talk about life lessons, whether it's in the business, whether it's failures, successes. We're going to get in depth and find out what's going on. And two of the segments we're going to do weekly is called our X's and O's and binge watching. X's and O's is not your conventional when you talk about game planning. X's and O's of dating, relationships, advice for marriage, those type of things. And something that we've all been openly about and talked about during this COVID-19 is binge watching. What do you binge watch? I know I binge watch a ton of programming, but we're going to ask them what they've been binge watching and what they recommend. What's their must watches, if you will. And of course, we got to talk about football because hell, it's in my DNA. We're going to get my thoughts and take on the Cowboys last game and the upcoming games and look at the NFL schedule. But here's what I really want you guys to do, because this is a show we all participate. I want you to follow us during the social media and make your comments, because guess what? We're going to give you some really, really nice prizes in the future. So make sure you're very active on social media, because that's our highway to connection, and make sure you follow us during our broadcast. As mentioned before, off the top of the show, I said that I wanted to bring in inaugural, someone special, someone charismatic, someone that's timeless. And I couldn't think of a better guy than the great, great Drew Pearson. I mean, I think I need to introduce you, Drew, but I want to ask you, while I introduce you, you're the original number 88, the great Drew Pearson with the Dallas Cowboys, Ring of Honor, and future Pro Football Hall of Famer, brother.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me on, Tony. Yeah. I like what you call me, timeless. I like that because, I seem like I really have been. It's been over 40 years since I played, but people come up to me and, they treat me like I still play for the Cowboys. And so that's a pretty good feeling that people still look at you that way. And, you can present yourself like that. You look in great shape. I try to keep in shape myself because I don't ever want anybody to come up to me, Tony, and say, hey, you played wide receiver that big? So I like to stay in shape,
Yeah, I have some former teammates that they ask that question. So that's a great point. I think that I'd like to start here because everyone that the familiarity that they have with different players, and especially you in Dallas, and one of the greatest players that's ever wore a star in his helmet. But I'd like to just kind of go back in time and really just kind of, a place in time, really how you got started, how you had this really passion for football and the journey that ultimately led you there.
Yeah. Tony, when I got that call back in August that from David Baker from the Pro Football Hall of Fame, saying that you're senior nominee and the finalist for that. And that's like, almost a sure thing that you're going to get into the Hall of Fame. And the thing I thought about first is where I came from and the things I did as a kid, like the question you're asking, what did I do along the way? I never dreamt of being a Hall of Famer when I was a kid. Man, that goal, that was too lofty for anybody at a young age to be dreaming of. But I did dream of being a pro athlete. And I think about all the time, I played Pop Warner football, tackle football at 7 years old. I was so small, they didn't have pants that fit me. I played in jeans. They rolled up my jeans, put pads in my jeans.
That's an interesting uniform.
A belt on. And I was thinking about all those kind of things I went through, just our town, South River. It's a football, sports-oriented town, but football is it. And if you're a boy growing up in South River, your dream is to play high school football for South River High School Rams. And we had a history of great people coming through the high school and stuff like that. And you wanted to follow them. And you did all those things that you needed to do to be in that position to play for South River High School. And you thought about all those kind of things you did, running and jogging through the town and all that kind of stuff. And then you go play high school football and you have success and you go to Tulsa, Tulsa, Oklahoma. You go from New Jersey to Tulsa. And how bad that was, I got a great education at Tulsa, but football-wise, we didn't do very well. I had 3 head coaches in 4 years, 3 losing seasons in 4 years, and 3 years of probation in the 4 years I was there. So, you go through that, and then you end up as a free agent with the Dallas Cowboys, and bam, now things are really starting to happen for you. But you don't get there unless all these other things happen to you along the way, and you overcome all these things along the way. And Tony, when I got into the Cowboy Ring of Honor, I said, especially my kids, and my family and relatives, my grandkids, I said, don't judge me by my name being up there. Judge me how I got there, Don't honor the man, honor the mission, what it took to get there. And that's what it would have been. And that's what I thought about when I got that call from the David Baker, all the things you accomplished and overcame along the way to get in that position to be considered for the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
And that's amazing, the mission. People, they see the finished product, but they don't know what all the hard work that went into it to get you on top of the mountain. Was there anyone that was instrumental, a mentor? We always need to, garner some emotional and support and someone to just push us along. Was there a mentor or someone in your life that really, really was impactful to kind of push you along and get you where you eventually wanted to go?
Absolutely. Every step of the way, somebody's been there. The only time I really didn't have good mentorship was that time I was at Tulsa because of 3 head coaches and all that kind of stuff. The football program was in shambles most of the time and probation and all that. But in high school, first of all, in my household, my mom and dad, established the mentorship that I needed to follow by setting the necessary guidelines through discipline that I needed to follow. We had no pass, no play in our household way back in the day. We didn't have to have the state legislate that, okay? My dad was the one legislating that, okay? So, that mentorship. And he stressed that, sports were important to him because he played as a kid growing up and all that, my mom too. But he also stressed academics were the most important thing. And if we didn't get the grades, we weren't going to play. But if we got the grades, he said, hey, if you're going to be a boy in my house, you're going to either go to practice after school, play some kind of sports, or go to work, okay? So the 3 boys in the family, we all went to practice. So anyway, the mentorship started there with my parents. And then, I had that lapse in mentorship at Tulsa, but then it picked up with the Cowboys, And, I'm only 21, 22 going into that environment. I haven't really established myself as an adult, and what path I want to follow. What do I want to be like in my adult life, So now I'm around Staubach and Landry and, Bob Hayes and Lilly and all these great people. And I know they're great football players, but let me tell you, Tony, they were great people too. And if you were smart enough, you watched how they did things. And they not only taught you how to be a good football player, but they taught you how to be a professional, not only on the field, but off the field as well, how to carry yourself, how to speak, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, you have those mentorships all along the way that, you know, that you want if you get that opportunity at a Hall of Fame induction speech, those are the kind of people you want to thank along the way for helping you get to that point. There's no question about that.
And those names you just mentioned, the who's who, the Staubachs, Tom Landry's, the names that go on and on. What was it like when you were drafted by the Cowboys? What was your initial thought and reaction when you saw those guys in living color?
Well, first of all, Tony, I wasn't drafted. I signed as a free agent.
That's right, undrafted.
I'm still upset about that. Okay, 'cause they had 17 rounds of the draft, 450 some players, and I still didn't get drafted.
Let's blame it on Tulsa.
Over that, you got to move on. But anyway, I had a chance as an undrafted free agent to sign with Green Bay, Pittsburgh, or Dallas, and Green Bay wasn't really much in the picture, even though, you know, this. Not getting drafted, I was very disappointed. You know, man, it was tough to go through that, thinking that you're going to get drafted. Your dream might not be able to be realized, and that might be the end to the opportunity to realize your dream. Your 4 years of college football. So when the calls came in, I was, got feeling better because it was the Green Bay Packers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Cowboys, 3 storied franchises in the NFL. So Green Bay, I wasn't even in the running, but Pittsburgh was very close. They offered more money. One of the Rooneys came to Tulsa. They bought me a dinner and everything, and they almost had me at dinner. Free meal in college. That's a big deal. So they almost had me at dinner. But Tom Landry and the Cowboys. That's all we watched when I was at Tulsa. That's the only thing that ever came on TV was the Dallas Cowboys. And then I'm saying, wow, if I could play for them, that would be the best way to go. So I ended up signing with the Cowboys for $14,500. And don't you laugh, Tony. Here's my signing bonus was $150. Okay, $150.
Hey, I'm not laughing.
$150.
Yeah, but you're probably smart enough business-wise.
I know you got more than that.
You probably still had that $150 you earned. Me, on the other hand, that's another story. But hey,
no. They paid me in cash. That didn't make it back to the apartment.
What was the first thing? I was going to say, what was the first thing you did with that $150 worth of cash?
We went to the dorm. I went to the dorm and had a party with the boys, drinking that Boone's Farm.
Nice.
I was married, Tony, at the time. I got married right before my senior year at Tulsa to Marcus Haynes, a legendary Harlem Globetrotter.
Absolutely.
His daughter.
Yep.
Yes. So, after I got the $150, I went back to the apartment that we had and told my wife at that time we only got $75, and then went to the dorm and had a party with the boys with the other $75. So that's how.
Did she ever find out?
My signing bonus.
Did she ever find out about the other $75?
Yeah,
Is that why she's your ex-wife? No, I'm just kidding. Hey, and I apologize for mentioning that you were drafted because, I mean, they even makes the story and the mission even more rewarding. And how much of that is a chip on your shoulder when you're not undrafted, where you want to prove everyone wrong? And is that something, because I know a lot of people go on in life, but how important is that to your success to really kind of live with that type of, not syndrome, but just the fact that you're an overachiever?
Absolutely. It played a major part because every time I did anything, Tony, to try to make that team, I thought about that feeling that I had when I never got that call that night.
Yeah. And
how sad and crying and disappointed and almost realizing the opportunity that you might not have an opportunity to realize your dream to play pro sports. And so, yeah, every time I took a lap, with Coach Landry, we had to take those 2 laps before practice to warm up. I would run that lap thinking about that feeling.
Yeah.
And wanting this day to be one of those things. I had a philosophy to live to play another day in training camp. I took training camp one day at a time. I wanted to win each day along the way and see if that was good enough, at the end to be there, first of all,
right,
and to hopefully to be a Dallas Cowboy. But Tony, I had made it through the training camp, and the Cowboys had cut me on the last cut. And the Chicago Bears claimed me. And the Cowboys had 24 hours to recall me. And they recalled me through that process. So I could easily have been a Chicago Bear. And I didn't know this until later. Gil Brandt told me all about this. But because if I had known that at that time, because I didn't, once you make the team, you never hear that knock, or you got cut, bring the playbook.
Yeah, the Grim Reaper. Yeah.
Once you don't hear that, you're like saying, okay, but knowing that you might have been that close to hearing that, it's like scary. So anyway, I never heard that knock, and the Cowboys recalled me, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, and you got so many great moments in your career. As far as receiving yards and everything, you're remarkable what you done on the football field. Obviously, the play when I look back at your career is the Hail Mary catch in the '75 divisional playoff game versus the Minnesota Vikings. And what was that to be referred to Hail Mary and kind of be the originator of one of those plays? I mean, how does that make you feel? And what was the whole thought process when you go back? And I'm sure it's vivid, but when you think about it today, what does that bring up as far as the memory?
Well, first of all, it's almost asked of me or asked about it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's still alive.
That's a true story, right? It's
still alive.
Still vivid.
And, the term Hail Mary keeps it alive because Hail Mary has infiltrated not from a religious sense only, but it has infiltrated to a sports vernacular, a life vernacular, a religious vernacular, a charitable vernacular. Every aspect of our lives, we've had Hail Mary moments in those lives, but we just didn't know what to call those moments.
Mm-hmm.
So when Roger said after a game, they asked Roger what happened on the play. He said, I threw the ball as far as I could. I closed my eyes and I said a Hail Mary. And next day in the paper, it reads, the headlines read, Cowboys win by a Hail Mary.
That's
and
good.
Boom, that phrase took off from there.
That's amazing.
And now you hear it. I hear it everywhere. I heard it twice this past weekend in different games. You hear it on the college level. You hear it on the pro level. You hear it in basketball. You hear it in baseball. So it's really cool to be associated with a play that meant so much to Dallas Cowboy history, but also because of the recognition it got and the label that it's gotten, it means it means a lot, or maybe in just as much in NFL history. Yeah. So it's regarded as one of the top plays in NFL history. So, but here's a guy, a Baptist. Okay, I'm a Baptist from New Jersey, and I'm known for a Hail Mary. Okay, I had to ask Roger, what is a Hail Mary? I would have said hallelujah. Roger knew it. I caught it and said hallelujah, or something like that. But, that's how things work out. That's the mission, to get to that ring of honor.
Well, being a Catholic, I know what Hail Mary is. So
there you go.
But when in reference to you, it's that pass, that touchdown pass. So we mentioned Roger, and he's he's a gem. And he's the all-time player in Cowboys history, and you're not too far behind him. But give me a story about Roger Staubach that we might not know, that if he found out you told us, he'd be very embarrassed.
Oh, man.
Come on, Drew. You got one.
He's such a straight arrow, man,
So you can't embellish when it comes to to Roger. But I mean, in a huddle, one of those huddle stories that maybe he told you, and something a moment you guys shared with you, like, man, this dude is amazing. He's special.
Well, when he comes in the huddle, he had complete command. He had that military background. Yeah. And so he knew how to command that respect in the huddle. So we were pretty much no nonsense. You know, the guy's joking around out there. You know, it didn't take Roger to get him in line. It took anybody to straighten him out because we were serious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Tony, to take that risk to play football, everybody got to be on that same page. You know, I can't have, if I'm going to run over the middle to catch that ball, I can't have Billy Joe Dupree not coming across, clearing it out for me, you know, and him making a mistake, not being there. So we were pretty serious. But Roger, I guess coming back on the plane, you know, we would always been able to get a beer and drink on the plane. Coach Landry would let us have a beer. You know, at first, when I got to the league, we had no restriction. You can drink all you want. Well, of course, we abused that. Okay, you know,
well, hey, if you're winning, you can drink.
Oh yeah,
and you guys won a lot.
You know, you guys used to
responsibly.
Exactly. Bottom of the can and stuff like that. Anyway, so we had too much beer, so he restricted to two beers apiece. So everybody would try to get Roger's beers because we knew he wasn't going to drink his beer. So one day he decides to keep his beer. All right. And it's a long flight from DC back to Dallas. And so he drank his 2 beers. And next thing you know, before we landed, he's back in it. He's knocked out. I mean, he just played an NFL football game on national TV. I know it was a Monday night game. So we had on the East Coast, that was a 9:00 kickoff. You know, I know we finished late. And, you know, I don't know if you guys did it, but when we played in RFK, if you played a night game, you couldn't leave at a national airport because of the sound noise and all that, the airplane noise. So you had to drive all the way out to Dulles Airport, which was an hour drive.
Oh, no, that's a long trip right there. There's a lot of drinking to be had then.
Right. By the time you got off the ground in the air, you know, it's a little while since the game, but not long enough to have a couple beers and fall asleep. You know, we landed, we woke Roger up. He said, "Where am I? What are we doing? What happened?" Anyway, that's a pretty cool story about Roger.
I love that. That's a great story. I wanted to ask you this because I think that we all look at our career and we go back and there's something we may have done or may have not done. Any regrets when you look back that something you may have just left on the table or some, you know, in a relationship or something you thought maybe you should have done before you left the game?
No, I just wish I could have played a little longer. You know, I played 11 seasons and I only missed 3 games in that process. So I was getting ready to sign a new contract at that point. It's the first contract I ever played out. You know, you start at 14-5. You know, I negotiated and I'm starting my rookie year, 10th game of my rookie year. So I'm negotiating, you know, my first 5 years in the league to get up to speed. So now I'm in my 11th season and they were starting to, you know, throw that money around a little bit. And I wanted some and we were negotiating and trying to get it. And since I hadn't been hurt and felt good, I figured I could play another 3 or 4 more years. But then I had a car accident and, you know, on LBJ here, and I lost my brother in that accident, and it wiped me out where I broke my clavicle, lacerated liver, serious condition and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm disappointed. I lost my brother, and that's, you know, how could you be so selfish to say that you just lost an NFL career, you know, by that? But at the same time, you know that it took that away too, okay? That accident. That tragedy took that away too. So you wish you could have extended a little longer. I wish I could have played a little longer for Coach Landry, you know, another 3 years. I might have learned a little more. You know, Tony, when I got out of the game, I was thinking about this today. You know, when I got out of the game, I got it into the marketing business. I sold baseball caps, licensed headwear and all that.
Oh, I remember. I know that your business when it started.
Yeah, I did it for 23 years. And all the acumen and knowledge about that was learned from the Cowboys, you know, 11 years sitting in there. And then after I couldn't come back after the 11th season, I coached for 1 year with Coach Landry. And now I'm on the inside of the organization. I could really see what's going on. But all my marketing and PR knowledge and business acumen came from watching the Cowboys, watching Tex Schramm, Gil Brandt, you know, Clint Murchison, even the owner of the Cowboys.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know, Coach Landry, how organized he was. So I was able to, take all that and turn it into a life after football. But at the same time, I wish I could have played another 3 or 4 more years, only so I could see what I could have accomplished. Okay.
Right.
At that time, because I would have been 37, 38 years old at that point, So I just wanted to see what I could have maybe accomplished, if I was able to end my career like I wanted to end it.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about Coach Landry. You mentioned that he gave you some life lessons, and you mentioned that you wish you could have played longer for him. But I guess if you had to just do in a short paragraph or even a sentence, how would you describe that man?
Honorable, walk the walk. No, he talked the talk and he walked the walk. And it was faith, it was family, and it was football or whatever else was important in your life. And even with this strong faith, he only exuded that by the way he carried himself and what he did. He didn't have us praying before meetings and, all that kind of stuff. We prayed before the game. Yeah. We prayed after games. That's a normal thing. You've done that all through playing football. But, he didn't force his religion on anyone or the way he lived his life through his religion and his faith on anyone. But if you're smart enough, you pick that up and you lived your life that way as well. Now all of us, we didn't. Now, we didn't live it exactly like Coach Landry, because back in the day, we didn't have these cell phones or anything. So, we played hard, but we partied hard too.
Thank God.
But just being around Coach Landry, I just learned so much from him. And, while you're playing, I found this out when I coached with him for a year, and I'm in all these meetings, and hell, I even took a shower with Coach Landry. Oh my God, you don't want that ever.
I was going to say that sounds too intimate. That's too much. That's TMI. That's too much information.
Let me know when you're done. But you learn so much, from that man that you can use in your life after football. And he was preparing you that way. That's why we wore the suits and ties to games. We carried briefcases. We were studying a computer printout way back in the early 70s, tendencies of our opponent. Everything run with the football team was run just like the Cowboy business, like a business. And so that's how Coach Landry ran the team. And, if you're smart enough, you learn from that. All my marketing and PR, negotiating expertise, business acumen, everything came from being around the Cowboys. I got a great education at Tulsa, but my real education is like, if you go through a teaching curriculum in college, at the end of that, you got to do the practicum, the on-hands teaching, visit the classrooms and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you're ready to go. Well, when you get into a situation with Coach Landry, it's that on-hand teaching right there. It's the extension of your college career. Now you're in this situation. So if you're smart enough, you learn.
That's amazing. That's a great point, because I know that my generation, we made more money and I was very blessed. But I don't know if we watched the way people ran business. And certainly back in your era, you mentioned it, you got $150 in cash for a signing bonus. You had to probably learn a little bit more and absorb the educational business savvy.
Oh, yeah. I worked every offseason I played in the NFL.
Yeah.
I'm catching playoff touchdowns my rookie year in December. In February, I'm selling shoes and sporting goods at Cullman Boren Sporting Goods store. I had to have a job in the offseason, okay? That 14-5 went real quick, because once you make the Cowboys, Tony, they say success is relative. Mm-hmm. The more success, the more relatives you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everybody thinks you're playing pro football. They think you're a millionaire.
I know. And they want to borrow money, or they want you to give it to them.
Right. Exactly. And if you don't, you're a bad guy. So you feel a little guilty. So you do what you can do, the best you can. But as soon as the season was over, my rookie year, me, Harvey Martin, Billy Joe Dupree, we went up to the Casillas Corporation, downtown Dallas, met with the head CEO of the Casillas Corporation, sat in front of him and said, "We need a job. We need a job." He just saw us playing out there on the field on national TV.
That's
and
crazy.
We're saying we need a job. So he gave us a job in a sporting. Casillas Corporation owned the Coleman Gorham sporting goods stores. So he gave us jobs in the sporting goods stores, and that was my first job in the offseason of being a Dallas Cowboy. But I worked every offseason that I played for the Cowboys. We all did.
Hey, real quick, we're gonna. I want you. You mentioned life after football, and you've been just a very successful business entrepreneur. You're involved in a lot of philanthropy things. I know the Susie G. Coleman, you're a big advocate of that with your with the history in your family and with breast cancer. But real quick, and I know you do a lot of media and TV, and you're just all over the place. Kind of give me kind of an update, what you got going on now, and what you're looking forward in the upcoming future.
Well, Tony, now I'm just pretty much idling. I'm waiting for this pandemic to lighten up a little bit so that we can get things back as close to normal as possible. I had a restaurant. I have a restaurant at DFW Airport in Terminal E near Gate 5, servicing most of the United Airlines gates in that part of the terminal and the airport. And that's been shut down since the end of January. And so, we've been trying to get that ramped back up. And, a lot of my personal appearances and things of that nature were cut off because of the COVID, and people not getting together. But, you got to reboot. This is going on. You got to reboot yourself and find new ways of doing things. And so what I've done is rebooted myself in a way that I'm doing a lot of virtual appearances via Zoom and all these other things. I didn't even know this was available. I didn't know that. I didn't even know about FaceTime. My grandkids are FaceTiming that. I say, "What is this?" They're right there. I can almost touch them. So
that's called the Generation Z's.
All right.
As someone told me, our producer told me, Kevin. So, but but did you ever think in your wildest dreams that we experience in our lifetime, let alone our kids' lifetime, kids' lifetime, we'd experience this type of pandemic and this whole the COVID-19 that we're going through now? It's crazy.
No. You know why, Tony? Because I thought we were too smart to let something like this happen.
Yeah.
It's
a good point.
As a nation, we should be too smart. We got too many bright people to let something like this happen. Whether it's national security, whether it's the scientists, whether it's our leadership in government, whatever it is, we got too many smart people to not know this was coming and not prepare for it the way we should have, so it wouldn't have. You see the numbers going up. Over 200,000 people in the U.S. have lost their lives. And the shame of that is that they're just a number. We don't even know names. They just say, well, the tally keeps going up.
Yeah.
Well, who is the tally?
Yeah.
Who just died? Stuff like that. And that's what makes it so cold. But anyway, we should have been too smart as a country. We can detect missiles and excuse me, I started to say something. We could
you can say it.
Missiles
there's no 8-second button on this show.
Coming out of the air, coming through mountains and everything else. So we should have been smart enough to detect this and be able to come up with something, some way, somehow to not let it become the pandemic that it has become.
Yeah, 2020 is it's just been a crappy year, and hopefully 2021 will be better. Also, the whole social injustice. And I want to ask you and get your take on the platform professional athletes should take when it comes to protesting, when it comes to making their point. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I don't know. I'm for that, because it's an opportunity to keep the dialogue going, to keep the narrative going in the right direction.
Right.
Because people see that, they see why they're doing it. And now, because of George Floyd and other incidents, we have a better understanding why a player might kneel at the national anthem. It's not about the flag. It's about, the disrespect that people are showing people of color towards the flag, what the flag represents. And so now we have a better understanding about that. And now these athletes not only talk the talk, but they walk the walk because they put their money, where to action, where their word, or they allow their money put their words into action. Okay. Michael Jordan has given over $100 million to the cause, $10 million a year plus more than that, Drew Brees, $500,000 and stuff like that. So, that's important, but it's also important that people, when they see that, they still know that everything's not okay yet. Okay. We need to turn these protests. We need to turn this dialogue into policies and statements to start changing things. And athletes now, because of the social media platforms that is available to them and the followings that they have, I'm okay for them to speak out if they feel in their hearts that speaking out is the right thing to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, well said. Before we get into a couple of segments we do on my show, I got to ask you this. Last year, whenever, and I'm sure this is like a vivid emotion in your heart, when the announcement of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we all saw that unfold, we all saw that on television. We saw your pain and anguish that you didn't get selected, and now you're on the the senior vote for the only senior nominee for 2021 induction. But take us back to that moment, because as I said, I felt for you, brother. I mean, I was right there with the pain. I wanted to go down there and kick someone's ass for you, but I couldn't. But take us back, and how did you really feel? I mean, that when you found out you weren't going to go into the Hall of Fame.
Well, Tony, what you saw was real.
Yeah.
All right. That's what I felt. And, I'm a private person generally. People, when they see me in public, they think, he's so outgoing and everything. But when I'm in my house around my family, I'm the last one saying anything. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm more interested and rather be in that kind of environment than out in public, even though I still enjoy that. But, I'm so with that in mind, I didn't even think about being exposed that way because I didn't think that I would not get in. Now, I wasn't overconfident, but I thought this might be the best way for the Pro Football Hall of Fame committee to clean up the mistake they had been making for years. Like you being a first team all decade, the only one on the first team all decade not in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
So I thought this might be a way. And then I saw Harold Carmichael, who was second team on the all-decade team of the 70s, go in. And I'm looking at my phone thinking, wow, I must be getting a call pretty soon. Somebody called me, make sure my phone's still working, stuff like that. But when I didn't get the call and it ended, what you saw was raw emotion. And the reason you saw is because I had everybody there. I worked for mostly every radio and TV station in this market over the years since I've been here. So if one guy asked, can I come to be part of that or film it? Then you say, yeah. And then the next guy, you can't say no. So
and you thought it was going to be a celebration.
Tony, I was a finalist. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never been a finalist before. I don't know how finalists are supposed to act. Okay.
Right.
So I wanted everybody to be part of this, especially my family, especially a lot of close friends. So everybody was at my house, and what you saw was raw emotion when I didn't get the word. I was heartbroken. I was disappointed. But you know what? That was only for a few minutes. I overcame that shortly after that. I was okay after that because I'm thinking about, okay, maybe this is not my time. Faith is really important to me.
Yeah. And
my belief is really important. And I know God has a plan for me. After going through a car accident, losing my brother, and I'm still here, God's got a plan for me. And it's not a plan for disaster. It's a plan for hope. And so that's what I relied on. And so here's the deal, Tony. What about that plan I'm speaking about? 8 months later, okay, I get a call. I don't even have to wait a year. I go from January to August. I get a call and I go from sorrow to gladness in 8 months.
Yeah.
The Lord, he works that way, man. And so anyway, what you saw was real emotion, and I exposed myself to the world. And that was real. Now, Kardashians and all that, Terry Bradshaw's reality show, that's all fake,
But yeah, so it sounds to me you learned a whole different experience in life, and something that was really, really bad ended up being really, really good because, I mean, barring a miracle that they don't vote you in, you'll be into the 2021 inductee class. So I don't want to jinx you, but this is early. Congratulations. It's not etched in stone, but I don't think it's going to be a problem this time around, but big guy. All right, Drew, I think we all know this is a big year when it comes to voting in November. And how important is to you to tell everyone to get out there and vote and make sure you register to vote? Because if you're not voting, you're not making an impact.
Oh, that's true. And if you haven't heard, if you don't listen to anything I've said up until this point, there's a great interview with you, Tony. Listen to this. Get your butt out there and vote, okay? If you don't get out and vote, don't complain. Complain what's ever left, okay? But you have an opportunity to either way you want to vote. You have an opportunity to influence that. So take advantage of that opportunity. Get you out there and vote. V-O-T-E.
Hail Mary, baby. Go out and vote.
If you want to change something, you got to vote. We have that. That's a right we have. And if we don't vote, we might not have that right very, very often.
Amen. And you can't complain. All right. So we do two segments on our show weekly. The first one is called the X's and O's, and the X's and O's of life. So I'm going to ask you, it's related to relationships, dating, advice you would give for marriage. I think that you have a grandson. Well, I know you have a grandson that's at Colorado, and I hope that's going well for him. But what kind of advice, now, because these guys are called the Generation Zs, I believe, and everything's done on apps and iPhones and everything else. But with everything that we know, because let's face it, we're seasoned veterans when it comes to relationships and experience. What advice will you give your grandson and every young kid out there? Because it is generalizational.
Well, first of all, it's social media. You got to give them some advice on how to use social media. Use it to your advantage, not to where it becomes a detriment to you anywhere along the line, or harmful to someone else. And you got to be selective, because we hear all the time, once you push send, you can't get it back once it gets out there. So with social media, these kids need to be a little more selective of the choices that they make, because there's so many more choices they have an opportunity to make compared to what we had, coming through. So, I just tell my grandkids to, and my kids as well. I'm proud of my two daughters and my one son. The thing I'm most proud of is the fact that they've gotten great educations through college, and some, higher than that, to the master's level. And then they've never been in trouble. And the two daughters turned out to be sensational, unbelievable parents, And I'm not saying they learned that from me, but they are a lot tough. I thought I was tough on my kids, because my dad was tough on me, and that kind of passed that on, how to raise my kids. But no, they're a lot tougher on their kids than I ever was. So I'm proud of how they've become parents, and I'm proud of my son out in L.A. He's graduated from Loyola Marymount and stayed out there. He's in graphic designing and stuff like that. So I just, want to make sure they, what I wanted for my kids, to make sure they got a good education, stayed out of trouble, and do the right thing. Simple.
Yeah.
And I tell my grandkids the same thing. Get that education, stay out of trouble, and do the right thing. And that's why Grandpop don't give you that much money, because money is the root of all evil.
That's three huts. As far as the apps, could you imagine swiping right and swiping left back in your day? And on my day, I couldn't imagine that, how it's kind of desensitized everything as far as relationships and all that. But that's another story. As far as being romantic, and I don't know what your current situation is as far as your relationship or anything, but what is something's kind of your go-to if I want to romanticize someone and really show someone that they're really special? What is a hut go to when it comes to
Hey, my go-to, it's gone and went. Okay.
gone and went?
I don't know what my go-to is anymore. I've been in a relationship, but I'm
Is
not
that the name
right
of a
now.
movie? Oh, that's Gone in the Wind, right?
Yeah, gone in the wind. But I'm still getting recognized out there. I still try to keep date, just in case somebody thinks I'm worthy of spending some time with. And I am available right now. So you want to, highlight that part of your podcast here.
Hey, do you want to? Maybe we should just build you a profile right now on one of those apps.
Yeah, but I'm going to be on.
You don't need any help with that.
On that way, because the original 88 would get all kinds of responses from that. I'm not bragging or anything, but some of them would just want tickets to a game, not
All right, my last one, part of this X and O's segment. So I'm going to ask you again, Hut. When it comes to getting out of the doghouse, any tips on flowers or back massages? What do you recommend as far as just get out of the doghouse free?
Well, sometimes it's just a matter of something simple, like paying more attention to what they're doing.
That's true.
Kind of listening. Most of the time they're talking, but you're not
listening to that out there.
You're not listening, but maybe listen. So now you know how to respond to them, and you can respond in an intelligent way. But other than that, a little hug once in a while, a little kiss there, little touch, so it shows of affection. If you don't have that in your relationship, you've been married a lot longer than I ever been married, Tony. I was married once, 10 years, and I think the mistake there was, at the end there wasn't that show of affection.
Well, how do you rekindle that? I'm going to ask you that. How do you rekindle that? I've been married that for 23 years. Not that I have a problem with that, but what do you recommend for rekindling, keeping the fire going?
Well, there's a lot of sexual wellness treatment centers out there. You hear the advertising all the time on the radio. That might be the way
I don't know. I don't know if that's my issue, but
in that category right now. I don't know if you're in that category.
Hey, I appreciate that.
That would definitely keep the thing going.
That's for sure. All right.
But if you don't want the science to be involved, then you just better do the things you think that come natural.
Another segment we do on our show because of COVID-19 is we're all watching a lot of TV, Netflix, and whatever it may be, Hulu, Amazon, whatever, Prime, whatever it may be. What's something that you've watched over this whole COVID-19 over the last 6 months, 7 months? As you mentioned earlier, it's gone longer than it should have. But any shows have you watched? I mean, speaking of Kardashians, you a Kardashian fan? Or I wouldn't even think that would come out of your mouth.
No, I know. That's about it. That's about what I know. But no, I watch all sports. Okay. I don't watch movies. I don't have time for movies.
Mm-hmm.
I like to watch game shows. I like The Price is Right. I like I like Jeopardy. Jeopardy's my favorite show.
Yeah,
keeps
great. Yeah,
going, keeps things functioning in my brain. And I like Steve Harvey and A Family Feud because he makes me laugh the whole time. But other than that, it's The Young and the Restless and The Bold and the Beautiful.
Oh wow!
And they took a hiatus for a while because of the pandemic, but now they're back doing their thing again, and I'm happy about that. And I'm a big Victor Newman fan on The Young and the Restless. I had a cameo appearance on that show.
Really?
Yeah,
we need
about a year ago, back in June.
We need to make sure we find that. We'll have to generate that somewhere and channel that in.
June 30th, 2018 episode. And I was Victor Newman's bodyguard in that. So, but I've been a fan of The Young and the Restless ever since I played with the Cowboys. And then The Bold and Beautiful came along. So, but I'm not a movie guy. The last movie I went to see, because people really don't go to the movies now.
Yeah.
But the last movie I went to see and sat through in duration was Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, that's not a bad one to sit through. Was that about 25 years ago?
No, more than that.
Oh, okay. I was giving you the benefit of the
more than that. But anyway, that's my movie background, TV background, and that's what I like to do. I like sports. I'm watching tennis right now. We got the Roland Garros, what do they call that? The clay court tournament out in Paris. And that's on now. It's live because the time change over there. But, you know, I watch the basketball, the baseball, I watch football, the college. And that was the thing, you know, most of us were going stir crazy during this pandemic, Tony.
In those sports.
Sports was cut off.
Yeah.
You know, that's an outlet for a lot of people just to, you know, watch something real on TV, exciting. Mm-hmm. And then look at how these NBA games have been played, man. They're really exciting. And look at some of these NFL games. You know, you think about these guys going out there, Tony, with no OTAs, no training camp, no preseason games. And the first thing they do when they hit the field is they're playing live football, you know, live contact football in between those lines in the NFL. And you know how that is. And you know, if you can come out of a game after not going through that process of being able to take those hits, you know, you're lucky. You're lucky. And that's why they have so many injuries in the NFL this season, because the guys didn't go through the process of trying to avoid injuries by being in the best shape possible.
Yeah, we got to give a shout out. This show will air next week, October 7th, and the Stars had already lost the Stanley Cup final. But what a tremendous series that was. And you talk about playing in a bubble and that excitement and feeling it. I mean, those guys have nothing to be ashamed. I mean, what a great series. And I'm not afraid to admit I am a bandwagon fan. I didn't watch any hockey, but, man, I was glued to the TV from beginning to end in that series.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. If you cared anything about sports and you watch how these guys perform and how they would come back and win and go to overtime and pull it out and all that, you know, I was a kid growing up in New Jersey. I played hockey, but we didn't play hockey by rules. You know, we just put a puck out there. We played, choose up sides, and we played. But watching these guys play and what they give to the game. But here's the deal. I feel bad for them. Not so much that they lost in Game 6 last night, but more so that the fans couldn't enjoy the process, you know, to get to the Stanley Cup. And the players couldn't enjoy what the fans bring to the process to get to the Stanley Cup.
Right.
You know? So even if they win, it'll be, you know, it's nice to win it, but a little anticlimactic. Yeah. But here's the deal. It's nice to have somebody, a pro team from the Dallas-Fort Worth market, thriving for a championship. Oh, my. How long has it been?
Well, I'm going to keep you. Yeah, it's been
Cowboys,
a while. Yeah, it's
Rangers. Somebody wins the what is the soccer team? FC Dallas?
Win something.
Somebody wins. Maybe it's the Cowboys' turn. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I hope so. Well, this segues into my last segment I have, and that would be the Tony's Take. And each week I'm going to cover all my thoughts on the last game the Cowboys played and upcoming games in the National Football League. So since I got one of the greatest Cowboys on my first show, I'd be remiss not to ask you about the Cowboys. And keep in mind, they played the Seahawks last week, and today is the 29th, and they play the Browns this upcoming weekend. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Cowboys are going to be 2-2 before we air our first show. Real quick, what have you learned from the Cowboys early on?
We got some great talent on offense. That offensive line, you know, of course, is beat up, makeshift a little bit, and what they had to do in that Seattle game to finish that football game, and everybody that started the game in the offensive line in one position didn't finish the game in that position. They all moved on to enough. If you're a center, you move the guard. If you're a guard, you move the tackle, and, you know, stuff like that. Yeah. But anyway, the injuries is part of that. But the offense can do a lot. We can put up points. But we got, you know, Tony, I got to give you guys credit. You know why I was able to catch that Hail Mary? Because the defense made a stop to get the ball back for us.
Yeah,
okay,
that's
all right.
That's a tremendous point. Giving the defense some props. Yep.
So they got to get the defense on par. And I thought that would be the least of our problems initially. But then you look at, I might ask you this question. You look at what the new defensive coordinator is bringing as far as his philosophy. And is that make much of a difference to the players as far as the learning process so that they can know what to do and not be thinking about what to do?
It shouldn't be.
You know?
And it sounds to me it's more simple, or it's a philosophy that shouldn't be that hard to adjust to. Now, I will give him this because of all the pandemic and the virtual workouts and not having the OTAs and no preseason, but it can't be that difficult. Problem is, Drew, and you know this, you got players that are being paid. You got to go out there and perform, man. You got to get the ball back to the offense.
Take the playbook home and study.
Yeah.
Take the film home and study. You got laptops, you got iPads and everything. You know?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And it's football. It can't be that much different, right? So
right.
Anyway, maybe it's what this is all about. Maybe they need some more heart and courage. They need to go see the Wizard, get some courage.
That's right. Well, hopefully they'll be 2-2 going into the Giants weekend and hopefully get back above 500. Hey, Drew, I cannot thank you enough, my man, for having you on my first show. You're classy. I mean, you're one of a kind, and good luck to you, brother. Real quick, people can catch you on Zoom, your Zoom broadcast, right? You're doing a pre and post game show. You want to plug that, and we'll send that out on social media.
Check it out. I don't know how to call the call letters or the website or whatever, but you can get it through Facebook. Find out through Facebook. But we do a pregame, halftime, and postgame show via Zoom, and give the fans an opportunity to Zoom in, ask the original 88 a question, give your comment about what's going on with the Cowboys in the first half, second half, and, of course, after the game. But you can also get Drew Pearson Legends apparel at cowboylegends.com. If you want a Tony Casillas T-shirt, we can do that. Go to cowboylegends.com. All right.
Wow, you can actually get a T-shirt on that website. I'm gonna have to go order me a couple of them.
Yes.
That'll be the first.
We can have them made. We can have them made. We have them made domestically.
That's awesome.
Right here.
Amen. USA. Hey, Drew. Thanks a lot.
Quick turnaround.
Man. Hey, I appreciate your time, man. Hut.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm honored to be your original guest. To have the original 88 be your original guest.
You got that right. Thank you, man.
Stay safe. Hut.
The great Drew Pearson, everyone. Well, that's going to put a wrap on the first episode of the Tony Casillas Show. A big shout out to Drew Pearson, and what a wonderful guest for my first inaugural show. Thanks a lot, my man. Also, I want to remind you guys that you can follow our show on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube TV. Make sure you give us a follow, and make sure you tag during the show 5 people so they can share it. And you're going to be surprised. We're going to have some nice prizes to reward you with. So thank you all for watching the show. Hope to see you next week. I'm Tony Casillas. Te amo. Welcome to the Tony Casillas Show. I'm your host, Tony Casillas. And you know what? I am so excited. We are back for our second season of our show. And, you know, we all know about the pandemic over the last year and a half, but seems like there's some normalcy going on. People getting vaccinated and just people doing things in general. It's great to see people get out and active. And it's been a long year and a half. So I am so excited about my first guest. First of all, let me tell you this. If you like the show, which you're watching on Facebook Live, make sure you comment, like it, share our platform, because that's how we continue to grow. You can also subscribe to it on YouTube. But we're so excited. We wanted to think about someone we could get on here that would just kick our show off and just knock it out of the park. And I am so proud to announce and to introduce my first guest for my second season, first episode. That would be the GOAT, Troy Aikman.
Absolutely. Good to be on, bud.
So, you know, through this whole pandemic, I follow you on Instagram, and I think you do a tremendous job of taking care of yourself and body and everything. But, you know, as we kind of get out of this and exit it somewhat with a little normalcy, what kind of perpetuated you through it? And what, obviously, working, games during the football season, but beyond that, what kind of just kept you, sane in this whole process?
Tony, I really think it was, on the one hand, there were some silver linings. I mean, I was able to spend a lot more time with my girls because of the online stuff. So that part of it was nice. But I think, like what you said, I've always tried to take care of myself. I've always worked out, even after retirement, much like yourself. I know you keep after it as well. But when the pandemic hit, I just felt that people were going to go one of two ways, and mostly one way, and that was just kind of, let themselves go a little bit and not be able to keep up with things as well as what they would like. And so I decided that I was going to go the other way. And I got really ultra strict on my diet, worked out even more than I had been, and started doing some of the little things, stretching and things of that nature that I hadn't done before. I recommitted. I'd always been involved with meditation. It's been a big part of my life for, really probably the last 7 or 8 years, but I'd gotten away from it a little bit. My practice wasn't as good. So I rededicated myself to that here over the last year and a half. And, quite honestly, I'm reminded when I'm about to say this, because Babe Laufenberg used to always tell me, you never hear players in their early 20s say they're in the best shape of their life. When you say you're in the best shape of your life, it really means you're getting up there in age. But I will tell you, I am getting up there in age, but it really is the best I've ever felt, physically and mentally and emotionally and everything else. So that part of it, I guess, from that standpoint, the pandemic has gotten me to a better place, and for that I'm grateful.
Well, that's well said, because I feel the same way. When you're in the moment, when an athlete, look, that's what you're supposed to do. But there's a lot to be said when you get older and you get in your 50s, and it's like the one thing that your parents always told you, said, don't ever get in a hurry to get older. And then as you get older, you're telling the same thing to your own kids, and you're like, hell, they were right about that.
Yeah. Well, and I was talking with my girls just the other night at dinner, and my youngest just graduated from high school, and I know what that's all about. But when you're a parent, the 18 years from birth to graduation, it goes by in a blink of an eye. When you're a kid, and we all remember those days ourselves, it's an eternity. And I said, you won't really appreciate it until you have kids of your own. But man, it goes fast, and it's hard to believe that here I'm going to be an empty nester, and another phase of my life. Hey,
there's nothing wrong with being an empty nester. Trust me.
You know what? I'm kind of looking forward to it, quite honestly. I'm going to miss the girls and all that, but
absolutely,
it's another stage, and one that I embrace and I'm excited about.
And I mentioned the broadcasting. I look back at your career, and when you retired and you moved on and transitioned over with Fox into the broadcaster. And I'm sure people asked you this question before, time after time, but did you ever envision your broadcasting career would last twice as long as your tenure in the National Football League?
I know. I can't believe that either. I'm going.
I'm not trying to age you or anything like that.
I know. Everybody knows how old I am, and but. Tony, when I first got into it, I thought I'd do it for a couple of years till I figured out really what I wanted to do with myself. And,
right.
Here I am, my 21st season. But it's been a great job. It really is a great occupation. I told Jason Witten that when he was trying to figure out whether he wanted to continue to play or go into broadcasting. And when you have young kids, like, my kids weren't born until after I retired. So it afforded me an opportunity to really be available. I'm, only being gone on the weekends. This was prior to taking on the Thursday night schedule as well, but only being gone on weekends, and then being there during the week, being able to make all their events, driving them to school, picking them up, all of that, and then having the entire off season to be, at their beck and call was really awesome for me, especially as a single dad for so many years.
Yeah, and you mentioned broadcasting. I know that you have to kind of transition with, I would like a better words, the society of perception of social media, and how I would say how effective it is and sensitive it can be at sometimes. As you move forward in the beginning, as you mentioned, your first 2 years in the broadcasting to now, how sensitive do you have to be when you say something on there? I know there's been a couple of times where people were it was misconstrued, but how much does that come into your game plan as calling games and just saying anything, because people are going to have this reaction
Yeah.
negative or positive. I mean, it's got to affect how your delivery and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and I think you probably experienced that as well. I think anyone who is in front of a microphone, it's changed. I mean, the times have changed, and you mentioned the social media front. Man, I'm glad I didn't try to break into this business with social media the way that it is today, because I was able to make some mistakes, and not that any less people knew of the mistake. The feedback to me wasn't that I was getting beat over the head about mistakes that I had made. And so, then you move along, social media comes about, and I think that whether it's someone like you and I or athletes, I think you've got to be able to be pretty thick-skinned about it, keep it in perspective. But then in terms of being able to, I think the biggest thing that I've noticed here over the last few years is everyone is so sensitive about everything that you guard against even having any kind of fun, because you're going to offend somebody.
And that's sad, isn't it?
Well, it really is. I mean, it just tells you that we're not where it's not where we need to be. It's not where we should be. It's not where I think we want to be as a country, as a people. I mean, I think we've taken a lot of steps backwards. I think there's a lot of good. There's some things that we've done that are better for a lot of people. But overall, I think in the big scheme of things, man, that we can't. I mean, I've heard comedians talk about it. It's really put a damper on their craft, and they don't even know what they can say.
I mean, what content are you going to use now, right?
Yeah,
it's going to be funny.
I had a line last year. I won't say what I was about to say, but I thought it was really funny, and I almost said it, and I didn't say it.
Go ahead and say it. It's a podcast, is it?
Well, then at break, I asked Joe. I said, "Hey, Joe," I said, "I came this close to saying this off of your comment," and he's like, "Yeah," he says, "That wouldn't have gone over very well." And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. I mean, 10 years ago, it would have gone over really well. It'd have been really funny. But now, just that everyone is just hypersensitive about everything. So it's taken a little bit of the joy, I guess, out of it, that you pretty much just keep it down the middle of the road.
Yeah, and you mentioned athletes and social media, and it's how important. I mean, that's so important for their brand now, right? I mean, they get 4 or 5 million followers. I mean, not only is that the brand, but along comes the monetary, be able to monetize that. I mean, think about your career going back when we played in the 90s with the Cowboys and the social media and everything out there. What would a guy like Troy Aikman been like?
I probably would have had more followers than I have now. I know that. I mean, it's the popularity of the Cowboys, but I don't know. I think that I think that most of us would probably look back on our younger years and be grateful that social media wasn't prevalent like it is now, and camera phones and all that. I think, it's certainly, as it's changed. I think the motivations in some ways for the athletes and for the younger kids, but I also think it's been tougher on them, in that they just can't be afforded to make many mistakes. I mean, it's just all right out there for everybody to see. And I don't know that anyone, we're all quick to judge, and we're all quick to be critical. I don't know that there's many people on the planet, if they look back on the mistakes that they've made in life, and the regrets and the decisions and that they wish they hadn't have made. I don't know that anybody can really stand up to some of the scrutiny that some of these young people are under today. Yeah,
it's a lot of scrutiny, but one more thought on that. It seems to me that while you want your cake and eat it as an athlete, a contemporary athlete, you want followers, it's hard for them to withstand the comments of maybe negativity, or a guy has a bad game and they're like, all of a sudden they're all sensitive about it. So it's almost like, well, why are you on social media if you don't want to hear the bad or the negative things?
Yeah, it's I hear a lot of people. We've all said it. A lot of people say, well, they don't pay attention to what people say. I think that everyone wants to hear good things. Nobody likes hearing people say bad things about them. But I think if you're going to be on that platform, then you have to be able to accept the criticism as well. I mean, it's the world we're in. I think as an athlete, you have to accept that if you're a professional athlete. Unfortunately, now college athletes and high school athletes are even under some of the same scrutiny that a professional athlete is, which I don't think is quite fair. But it is unique that players now, it's really more of I feel that there's not as much team chemistry as maybe there once was. And some of that is because of the off-season rules and all that. The players aren't able to get together the way that you and I were and our teammates. But also, it seems that each guy is kind of an entity of his own, and as you mentioned, they're kind of selling their brand and getting followers on social media or doing the endorsement deals or what have you. I think it's become, and that's not a criticism. I just think it's harder for teams and teammates to really come together and bond the way that we did throughout training camp, the way we had training camp, the way we had off-season programs. Guys worked out together. Now with the money that players are making, they've got their own nutritionists, their own strength coaches. They're kind of on islands of their own, which is all they've known. But it is different from what you and I experienced.
Yeah, it's definitely totally a different era when you when you look at that. And just one more take on that is your experience as the broadcast. I always think this is a good question that probably a lot of people would like to ask you. And you've dealt with a lot of different athletes. Is there one guy that you just really just didn't, I would guess, like bond with, or it was very reluctant to giving you information, or during your interviews, that the guy that you said, no, I don't really want to, it's not my guy, or I don't want to, it's not much fun, talking to him or interviewing him?
The only guy who for a long time,
there may have been an ass. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it was just not productive to be in a production meeting was Bill Belichick. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be judgmental, but that doesn't surprise me.
No, it wasn't a whole lot unlike what you would see at a press conference, that he would do for the country. And but yeah, so you get to a point where you just kind of, which is fine. I mean, they it's their prerogative as to whether or not they want to tell you anything. But you wind up carving time out. You go in and you talk to someone, and then if they don't tell you anything, you're kind of like, well, what's the point then? And so we didn't talk to Bill for a while, but then we had the Patriots in the Super Bowl back when they were playing Atlanta, and he was unbelievable. Talked to him before that game. I mean, he was so good. Nice. And I don't know really what happened, but since then, every time we have a Patriots game, I talk to Bill, and he could not be more forthright. Tells me the game plan, what they're thinking, who they want to kind of go after. I mean, he's been awesome. So, but no, I've never had. I've been really fortunate that the players and the coaches and the people that I've covered, they've all, now some are better than others. I mean, some give more information than others, but as far as just not getting along with them, I've never run into that. I've never had that situation.
Well, that's good. I mean, obviously your rapport and the respect that people have for you, that goes a long way. Another question that's related to, because I know that sometimes I like to get away from, what you do every day, and obviously that, but I just got to ask you about Aaron Rodgers, and I'm sure people have asked you about that. Is that just kind of an enigma, what's going on with that whole organization at Green Bay, and just this bad marriage gone bad, and nothing is going to be, seems like it's going to be reconciliated? How surprised are you about this whole drama with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers?
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, I think that Aaron's a unique person. I mean, I know Aaron well, and I have great respect for him. And he's just he's he's just a different guy. And when I say different, what I mean by that is he's got other interests. He's a really bright guy. I mean, he's just motivated. He wants to win and win championships and all those things. But, he's just wired a little bit differently. I think that's why he's probably had the success that he's had. I thought it was a little odd last year when they drafted Jordan Love with the needs that they had at the wide receiver position. And so I can understand. I know when Elway was at Denver, they drafted Tommy Maddox in the first round. And, I never went through that with Dallas. But if you're a quarterback and you feel like you're playing at a high level or you still have years left and you look at the team and you feel that the team has needs, and then they were to use a first round pick on a quarterback, I can understand why that would cause some frustration. But this past season, talking with Aaron, we had a number of Packers games. He said he was in the best place that he had ever been mentally, and he sounded like it. Said he was having more fun than he had. So coming off of last year and the year that he had the MVP season, going back to the NFC Championship game, and then all of a sudden for it to just totally unwind the way that it has, that part of it does surprise me. But there's no question, as you know, when they draft a guy in the first round, every organization, the thought is that, okay, well, this guy is going to play and he's going to be the starter at some point. And I don't know exactly what Aaron wants. Nobody does, really. I mean, people think, well, he wants the general manager fired. Maybe that's the case. Maybe he wants a new contract. Maybe he wants, right. I don't know. But what I know of Aaron, I mean, once he locks in and hasn't, I mean, he doesn't budge. And so I seem to be in the minority. I don't think he's going to play for the Packers. I mean, is what I think, just based on what I know. And now that he's missing this mandatory camp, so we'll see how it all unfolds. But I do not expect him to play the 2021 season in Green Bay.
Yeah, it's crazy to see this whole, the social media and just the kind of follow the story and where he's at. And you're right. He's 38 years old. He's going to be 39 soon, right?
I think he's 37 right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I believe.
Well, 30,
I believe.
But 37, 38, to think that, when you retired and you have Tom Brady, you have Drew Brees, you have these quarterbacks playing up in their 30s and 40s, and to think that in your early 30s, you're pretty much looking at the twilight of your career. You're getting ready to transition. And him, I mean, he's got Jeopardy, he's got other things going on. I just think maybe him. Yeah. I think it's just him, man. Just like, look, dude, I got more stuff going on. I don't really need you.
Yeah. Well, and now he's going to get married, so that'll really put the years on him. You know what I mean?
Damn, I've been married for 25 years, boy. There's some dog years in there, man.
Well, hey, congratulations to you on that. That to me, hey, I don't know what you think, but I'd say that's better than those 2 world championships you have.
Oh man. She's going to love those. That's why people love you so much, especially my wife, because what you just said, man, that's pretty cool.
Well, I do think that's true. That's a real, because you got to battle through it just like you did as an athlete. So congratulations.
Oh, I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
And real quick, I'm going to stick. We're going to move off the football, but we look at the Cowboys, and I'm sure you just. I don't know if you defend or you're objective when your views as a broadcaster, which is tremendous. And it seems to me that you've gotten a little bit more, not opinionated, but it seems that your voice has been a little bit more where it's opinionated and you're being objective, if that's a good way to say it. But when it comes to the Cowboys, how hard is it to defend them? Considering that you're a Hall of Famer and to me, arguably the best quarterback that's ever play for the Cowboys besides Roger Staubach. But to see the state of mind, how hard is it to defend what they're doing now?
Well, I'll be honest, Tony. I mean, I don't feel that I need to be a critic, nor do I feel like I need to defend. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I guess not defend, but just not to be totally just throw them under the bus.
Yeah, I just try to be honest. I just try to be honest in my opinions. And now that's not to say that every opinion that I have, whether it's the Cowboys or any other team, that that I air publicly. You know, I don't do that, and I don't think anyone does that. But I have thoughts, and maybe with the Cowboys, some people feel that maybe I'm harder on the Cowboys than I am other clubs, and I don't feel that that's the case. But you know, I know more about the Cowboys than I do other teams, and a lot of the same people, obviously the same ownership group, and the way things are done, the structure of the organization. So I definitely have opinions of that because I lived it, and I know what some of our downfalls were. I know why we were successful in the 90s. I know why we weren't successful in the late 90s, and so I think that my opinions come from a place of experience and firsthand knowledge. And so, you know, there are times when I would love to be the Roger Staubach and I love Roger. I mean, Roger's one of my dear friends. I think the world of him. But, you know, so Roger is always, cheerleading for the Cowboys, and which is awesome.
Or like Michael Irvin. Michael Irvin is the best advocate. He's passionate.
And Michael can do that. He can do that from the seat that he sits in as a studio analyst. As a game analyst, you can't do that. I mean, people and fans don't really understand that. Fans think that they see Michael and they feel that, well, that's the way all former Cowboys are supposed to be, or the way Strahan is about the Giants. And you can do that when you're a studio analyst, but you can't do that when you're a game analyst. And nor would I want to, you know, I mean, I want to call the game as I see it. And so from that standpoint, the thing is, Tony, that fans, when the Cowboys play another team, fans of the other team think that I'm a homer for the Cowboys. Cowboy fans think that I'm anti-Dallas. And Pat Summerall told me years ago, he said, as long as I'm getting criticism equally from both sides, then I'm effectively doing my job. And that's how I feel. And to go back, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. You know, criticism is part of it. I think people hear what they want to hear, and I don't really pay much attention to it.
Yeah. One thing they're going to be doing this summer is they're going to be presenting, Jimmy Johnson into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. How surprised were you that he picked you? Because that's a huge honor, brother. And think about it. I mean, how surprised were you whenever he called and let you know that he wanted you to be the guy to present him?
Yeah, I was, Tony, you can't even imagine how surprised I was. I had a number of people, and I think it's because they saw my reaction on television when it was announced he was going into the Hall of Fame. And I was asked by a number of people, do you think Jimmy will pick you to be his presenter? And I said, no, heavens no. I said, Jimmy and I are close, but I said, I think it'll be one of four people. I thought it would be one of his two sons, or his longtime attorney, Nick Christian, or Terry Bradshaw, who he works with every weekend there on the Fox set. And so when I was chosen to be the presenter, now he chose Terry Bradshaw is going to be the one who presents him with his gold jacket the night before the ceremony. Okay. So Jimmy said, hey, I'd really like to have Terry do this, and I want you to then be my presenter. I said, great, Jimmy, this is all about you, so whatever you want is fine. And so I just actually did did his video yesterday. They stopped having live comments from the presenter, so I did it yesterday. But yeah, he came up to me when I was checking in Miami for our last Super Bowl that we had. And as soon as I was in the lobby, he had been waiting on me, and he came up and he told me at that time, and I was blown away. You know, and you said it's a huge honor, and I couldn't agree more with you. In fact, Tony, it's the greatest honor I've ever received. I mean, and I don't say that. I'm realistic when I say that. I mean that. It's more meaningful to me than when I was selected to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And wow. And the reason is that if you get selected to go into the Hall of Fame, you know, think about it. You can ask anyone you want, any person you want to be your presenter. And so for someone to ask you to present them is a huge honor. And for it to be Jimmy, you know, who coached me, you know, the last time in 1993, we've obviously remained great friends working with Fox, but yeah, it's the greatest honor ever. And I'm really humbled by it that he wanted me to do it.
That's gonna be great. So you mentioned you did the video for the presentation, correct?
Yep.
You got anything you want to like tease or that may
well the one thing that I said was, you think about it, Tony, I mean, this is going to be a great night. It's going to be a great night for everybody that's going in, but just keeping it on the level of Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy who a lot of players never got an opportunity to just thank him for what he meant to them or what he meant to our success. And the fans, think about this, the fans have never had an opportunity to honor Jimmy and to show their appreciation for what he did for the team of the 90s and the way that he built that franchise. He hasn't gone into the Ring of Honor. He hasn't been honored at Cowboys Stadium, at the old Texas Stadium. And so now, for the first time, he's going to go in at the highest level to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and those fans will get a chance to really express their appreciation for all that he did. And I know that that's going to be a really, really meaningful night for him. And that's what I'm most excited about. It's long overdue for Cowboy fans to be able to thank him and show their appreciation for him. It's a shame. It really is, to me. It's a shame that it hasn't happened in Dallas.
Why is that, Troy? I mean, is there? It's backwards. I mean, he should already been in the Ring of Honor, but why is there? If there is any type of dissension or reason why Jerry wouldn't already had him in the Ring of Honor?
Well, I think it's probably a continuation of why they split to begin with. Back in 1993.
That's been 20 something years, man. Sometimes
it's been a long time.
Sometimes you got to bury the grudge or whatever.
It's been a long time, and I just think that Jimmy, obviously, there's no one involved with those teams. There's no one really involved with football that wouldn't agree that Jimmy Johnson should be in the Ring of Honor, and he will be in the Ring of Honor. At some time, he's going to be in the Ring of Honor. My hope is that when that day comes and he is going into the Ring of Honor, I hope that he's alive, and I hope that Jerry Jones is alive, and I hope that they're hugging each other on the 50-yard line when they drop the drape that has his name up in Cowboys Stadium. That's what I hope for. Whether or not that'll happen, I'm not real sure, but it's been long overdue. So I'm glad that Cowboys fans and Cowboys players and Cowboys staff and everyone else that will be there in Canton, Ohio, I'm glad they'll have an opportunity to express to him what he's meant to them, because I know what he meant to me. And
yeah, I know. But
as you know, Tony, there's a lot of people that are responsible for what we were able to achieve, but I don't think anyone's more responsible than Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, you're right about that. Does it bother him, you think, because he's not in the Ring of Honor?
Well, I think that I don't think it will now. I don't think it'll bother him now. I think
it's like a footnote now.
I think deep down, I think that Jimmy. I'm not sure Jimmy ever thought that he would get into the Hall of Fame. I didn't think he'd get into the Hall of Fame, not because I didn't feel he was deserving, just because he hadn't coached long enough. He hadn't won 100 games as an NFL head coach, and that was kind of the benchmark. So, but he retired. He went off to the Keys. He went and did his thing. So I think he thought his only real shot at having a legacy that outlasts him would be to go into the Ring of Honor. But now that he's going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I'm not sure the Ring of Honor. It would still mean a lot to him, but I don't think now that's as pressing of a desire as what it might have been prior.
And by the way, I saw that photo you guys down in Key West out on his boat. Yeah. That was pretty cool. That's pretty special.
Yeah, it was a good group. We all went down, and I was planning. This is the downside of the pandemic. No one even knew that I was going to do it, Tony. But I had made plans. I was renting out Mi Casina in Highland Park Village, and it was just going to be a Cowboys event. It was going to be Cowboys players that were a part of the 92 and 93 season and coaches. And it was just going to be a chance to honor Jimmy, because when we all get to Canton, he's going to be pulled in so many different directions that I told him, I said, Jimmy, nobody's going to really get the time with you that they would want. And this is an opportunity for for guys to come in and just thank you for everything and you to be honored in a very relaxed setting. And he was all for it. And so we were all set to do it last May. And Jimmy was ahead of himself, ahead of everyone. He was ahead of Dr. Fauci. He called me up before anything started getting closed down, and he said, "Hey, Troy, I think maybe we ought to cancel this. I just hate for us to, you to put money into this thing and not be able to have it, and this and that."
Right.
And so we canceled it, and we wouldn't have been able to have it anyway.
Well, the whole pandemic just messed up a lot of things. It's good to see some normalcy. It's good to see. People going to, events and, people are doing things now. And it seems to me, obviously, that's going to, the games this year, the different venues and stadiums throughout the country and the NFL, there's going to be full capacity fans. So that's going to be pretty cool.
It'll be awesome. Yeah. It's, it was different calling games without fans. And we at least had the crowd noise pumped into our headsets. So, but just the visual was odd. I don't know how the players did it because they didn't have that pumped into their headsets. So they're out there literally playing when it's pretty quiet. But
obviously the Cowboys didn't have it pumped in there. Last year it was kind of
they had. But the good thing about it, Tony, was we were able to get in and out of those stadiums. There was no traffic. I mean, we were especially Thursday night games. Sometimes it's pretty brutal on a work night, fighting the rush hour traffic to get in and out of these stadiums. And, we didn't see anybody. We got in, got out, got to the airport, got on our flights, got home and all that. But with all that said, I'd much rather be fighting traffic and have fans at the games than go through another year like we did last year.
All right. Well, I really, again, I appreciate you hopping on here with me. Real quick and just related to Cowboys, I'm sure you answer this question all the time, but after that dismal season last year, people just want to forget. It was it was just inexplicable what happened on the defensive side of the ball and then offensively when Dak got injured. I mean, how do you see this team moving forward? I know you're obviously a big fan of Dak Prescott and what they can do offensively, but now this seems to me, and you know this, that defensively you have to be able to get stops. You have to be able to keep the complement each other. And last year they compromised each other. But as a whole, and what you've seen to this point, and everybody has high expectations. Give me a real quick synopsis of what you think about this team can do this year. What do you think the top and the bottom and top of this team as far as potential, what they can do this year?
Yeah, it's a good question. It seems like we are probably by and large overly optimistic about the Cowboys each and every year. Cowboys fans and those of us in Dallas, as opposed to what maybe people around the league think and how they perceive the Cowboys from one year to the next. But I don't think it's as simple as just saying, well, Dak's going to be back. He's healthy. So now they're off and running. I believe that, this offensive line, they're healthy right now in June, but can they remain healthy when they start having to be more physical is a real question. As to whether or not they're going to continue to be good. They've got all the pieces, as you said, that they should be an explosive offense. And if they don't turn the ball over, they were that, even though they lost games when Dak was healthy last year, it was more about the turnovers than it was just not having an ability to move the football. On defense, I mean, you know this better than I do. I think if you have a mentality of being aggressive, being physical, and flying around to the football, I think you have a chance to be a good defensive unit. And then if you're talented on top of that, then you have a chance to be a great defensive unit. And I like Dan Quinn. I do think that last year, and it was really, unfortunately, Mike Nolan, he kind of fell on the sword for their failures. But the intent, which was handed down by McCarthy, was that they wanted to be multiple in what they were doing. And so that's what they tried to do. And the players just weren't, for whatever reasons, whether it just wasn't coached well enough or whether they just couldn't absorb it, whatever it might have been, they made way too many mistakes. And so there's no question that the style in which Dan Quinn plays defensively, it will simplify things. Guys will know where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to do. And hopefully that'll allow them to play faster. And then some of these young players with another year under their belt, they'll play better. But when you've lost the way that they lost last year, I think you have to kind of learn how to win again. I mean, you have to kind of come together and you work through that and win some games early and slowly start to build your confidence back up, is the way that I believe that it happens. And like I was saying earlier, I just don't know how all that comes together with so little time in the offseason. Now, everybody does that. And I think the good thing is for Dallas that, unlike a lot of other teams, they've got a lot of players that are there during their voluntary workouts. So that gives them a leg up. But they should be a good football team. And it seems like I'm saying that each and every year, and then it doesn't always happen.
Hey, we're all saying that.
Yeah.
Seems like that's always a narrative,
so
right?
Hopefully it happens.
Yeah. All right. So on my show, we do a couple of segments with my guests. The first one is X's and O's. We're excited to announce starting this week that X's and O's will be brought to you by Dr. Matt Chalmers of Chalmers Wellness in Frisco, Texas. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. It's more life skill related. What's going on? And, nothing. It's really personal. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
First of all, you mentioned you like to travel, right?
Yeah.
So if there's one place that you could go and travel to that you haven't been to, but it's on your list to go to, what destination would it be?
Well, the one that comes to mind right away is Bora Bora. I was just talking about that place, and it's a place that I've wanted to go. I've also heard a lot about New Zealand. I first heard about it years ago. I was still playing. It's how far back it goes. Norm Hitchkus was the first one who told me about. He says you got to make a trip to New Zealand sometime. And since then, he's gone several more times, and he's told me as well. And then others have said the same thing. So that's another spot I'd like to go. That's one of the things that, I've really gotten into photography, and I've always been somewhat of a frustrated photographer going back when I was quite young.
Oh, really? When did that start?
Well, my mom, back when I was a kid, she was one of the first people that I knew to get a 35 millimeter camera. She got a Canon camera when it first came out in 35 millimeter. And so I was kind of interested at that time. And, a lot of kids back in the day, our age, they didn't have a ton of pictures of themselves when they were kids. I've got a lot because my mom was an enthusiast with the camera, that our heads weren't always in the shot, but our bodies were.
Yeah, the Polaroid was our smartphone back then, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I've taken classes, I've taken online courses, I've taken classes in person. I've done a lot, and so really, what I'd like to do, Tony, now that I am going to be an empty nester, or am an empty nester, is I'd really love to travel around. I follow a lot of photographers on Instagram. And go to remote places, great places, and just do photography. And so those are the places I'd kind of like to go. Where I've been to Africa now twice and done a couple of safaris. And man, those safaris that I've done and the trips to Africa have been the best trips that I've ever taken. I mean, awesome. I would go every year. If I could, and maybe I can, I don't know, but I love it over there.
So you see, like
really
you've
great.
been on safari, and I think I've seen that on your Instagram. So you've been out there in the element where you're seeing lions and elephants, and I mean, how vast is that? It seems so majestic to see all that stuff.
Oh,
man.
it's kind of an overused term. People say, hey, it's life changing, but this really was. I mean, it truly is life-changing. It's just, it's a magical place, to be able to go and see, and the thing about it is these animals, they've all been raised around vehicles driving around. And so, you're pretty safe when you first go and you don't really, you're not used to it. I remember the first trip. I mean, our first time out in the safari, we came up on a lion, and it walked, I mean, literally brushed up against our vehicle, and I was scared to death. I mean, I was like, oh my God, my heart stopped. I thought, man,
I'd have to change my pants on that one.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, if you get a chance to go sometime, you should go.
I don't know if you've done this before. Have you ever been to Alaska?
I've not.
Have you ever been salmon fishing? I mean, I've always like on these weekends. Let me just tell you, go to Kenai, Alaska, and go get you a fishing guide and go salmon fishing on the Kenai River. There is nothing like it, especially like in July, whenever there's 18 hours of daylight. Dude, I tell you what, it's the best place and dude, the glacier flyover. The glacier flyover. I tell you what, man, you're talking about majestic and serene, man. It's amazing.
I'd love to. That's another good spot. Yeah.
Yeah, you should try that. You mentioned Mi Cocina. We know that restaurant. So I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite beverage of choice? Margarita, wine, or beer?
I would say beer.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not a big drinker, but and even less so here in the last year and a half. But yeah, I would say I'd say cerveza. So cerveza, por favor.
Yeah,
did I say that right?
You're right. Well, you're looking at me, man. You expect me to have fluent Spanish, right?
I was waiting for you to
correct you
to affirm my pronunciation. Yeah,
you did pretty good. You mentioned.
If I said that on the air, I'd get canceled. I mean, doesn't
that suck, man? I mean, really, think about it. I mean, it really does. Hey, and to that point, remember how much fun?
None of those people have ever been in a locker room. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. So, what do you say in a locker room now?
I hope. My hope is that the locker room is sacred ground. I mean, I hope that the locker room hasn't changed. Yeah, I mean, hope so.
Hopefully, there's not HR in there because we know that's that'd be a tremendous problem.
My guess is. You probably agree, Tony. I mean, there's nothing that takes away from the victories and the accomplishments on the football field. But man, when you get away from the actual game itself and the time in the locker room, I mean, those are cherished moments, and that was a lot of fun. And I think all athletes, when they retire, that's what they miss most is those lighthearted moments within the locker room. And there's a real kinship and a bond that occurs. And that's what, everybody says it, and it's so true that our politicians and everyone could really learn if they went into a locker room and see how 45, 50 guys from all different backgrounds come in, and not only do they get along because they have a common objective, but they also have fun at each other's expense, and nobody takes it personal, and everybody laughs about it because they know everybody cares about one another. And I think that's something that everybody could learn from.
That's pretty good perspective. You think about it. People having to deal with different and just not taking each other serious too. I think that's what we do now is like there's so much, I don't know if it's a pandemic and how, it's kind of like when you watch basketball, all the fans acting up and you should never do that. But still, we just can't laugh at each other anymore, Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, and the last one, Lisa, is part of this X's and O's. You're a guy that takes care of yourself. I mean, I still want to make you that challenge on Peloton because I think I can. It's the only low impact thing I think I still got left, and I'm going to get that challenge from you one time. We need to do it. I don't want to embarrass you, brother. I mean, and I need to follow you on. I follow you on Peloton. But as far as we talked about getting older, and just the perspective we have, and you look great. But what kind of advice you give for people as far as living a better life, as far as taking care of yourself? And you mentioned yoga, peace of mind, and everything. But what advice could you give people that are really looking to that kind of serenity when it comes to calmness?
Yeah, I get a lot of people asking me. It's why I've started posting some of it on my Instagram feed.
I love it, by the way, too. People, they need to follow you because you're a great follower.
I appreciate it. A great follow is Mark Hyman, Dr. Mark Hyman, Hyman. And I've read a couple of his books, and it really has helped me here in the last year. And a lot of the things I felt that I knew a lot about nutrition and the proper diet, but he dispelled some myths. And so it's helped me. But I think the key, I mean, the choices that we are making now or that we were making when we were in our 20s and 30s, this is the time that they start to pay dividends for us, especially as we continue to age from this point forward. And so I would just encourage people to avoid processed foods, eat whole foods. If you just did that, eliminate as much sugar as you can in processed foods. If you did that, I think you would notice a huge difference. I've got I started drinking this about 2.5, 3 years ago. It's a gallon of water, and I carry it around with me everywhere I go. And drinking, I drink about 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons a day. And that also has made a huge difference for me. I mean, I've noticed my sleep is better, my digestion's better, my skin's better, I feel better. And then just being active. Sometimes I think, and you're probably the same way, sometimes I think that maybe I overtrain a little bit. Yeah. Sometimes I'm a little more sore than I probably should be. I try to do things to minimize inflammation as much as possible. But just get out and move, whether that's walks, whether it's yoga, whether it's running, whatever it might be, being active, eating properly, and then making sure drinking plenty of water, making sure you're getting plenty of sleep. I finally got to where now if I have to get up early for some reason and I'm worried that I might oversleep, I'll set an alarm. Right. Otherwise, I don't set. I'm up about 6:30 most mornings. But
Are you a coffee drinker?
I do drink coffee, not a lot, but I'll have 2 to 3 cups. I'll have 2 to 3 cups in the mornings. Some people say that's okay for you. Others I've seen where they'd encourage not to drink coffee. But
there's always those people.
Those are the things that I do, Tony, and I think that they've really helped me a lot. And I think that they'd be game changers for those if they haven't incorporated those things into their own lives.
All right, our last segment is binge-worthy. Now, I've seen you on Instagram. You posted pictures of like F1 and racing and Formula racing. And we know through this whole last year and a half we've gone to, programming when it comes to Netflix, with Hulu, whatever it may be. But what's something binge-worthy, something that you're on that you recommend to our viewers?
Well, F1 is one of them. I didn't realize it's been out, I think, longer than what I realized. I thought it was kind of a relatively new docuseries, but it had been recommended to me by a friend, and then another friend asked if I'd seen it, and I said, no, I haven't seen it. So I started in on it, and I'm obsessed. I really didn't know anything about Formula One racing, but now I've learned a lot, and now I find myself becoming a fan to where I want to now go to some races. So I would highly recommend that. I've gotten into The Office, obviously an old show, but I've started binge watching The Office, and talk about some things that couldn't be said in today's television. I mean, it's like, holy smokes.
It's kind of refreshing to watch, though, isn't it?
Oh my God! Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe some things. Maybe
it's just funny, and so I've kind of enjoyed it. But some of those episodes, some of those things that I've heard, I've just thought, man, is that really happening?
Did they just say that, or did they just do that?
We've all been conditioned that you just can't talk like that anymore. So I think that's what probably makes it even funnier.
That's funny. That's kind of the form of profanity now, unfortunately, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Hey, Troy, I cannot thank you enough for being on my show. And I've told you this many times, man. I appreciate all the years, appreciate what you're doing, appreciate you helping out your football brothers. Seems like you're always there. And, I can't thank you enough. Thanks for hopping on, man. Appreciate it.
Tony, means a lot, buddy. Hey, I appreciate you. I'm proud of you. What you're doing, and I see you getting your workouts in and stuff too. I mean, you're a great example for a lot of guys, and I mean that especially guys who played offensive or defensive lines. I mean, those are tough positions, and to be able to keep the weight off and work out the way that you have, I know that is inspiring a lot of our former teammates and others that so thank you for that, and I love you, buddy, and I look forward to seeing you in Canton.
And I look forward to that Peloton challenge. Okay.
You know what we should do, Tony? We should do that, and we should gather as many probably teammates as we can, and we should do something like that and just see if we can't raise some money.
That's a great idea. I'll take advantage of you on that. Definitely.
Yeah, I know you just did that deal for the OU.
Yeah, that was good.
At Billy Bob's. Yeah. Maybe we can do something like that for some less fortunate teammates of ours.
Hey, I appreciate it, Troy. You're the best, man. Love you, brother.
Love you, buddy.
All right,
take care.
Take care. And look, I'm going to take Troy up on that challenge on the Peloton. I think it's a great idea that we raise money for my fallen brothers that I played football with and their families. And so I'm going to take him up on that, and I'm going to get more guys engaged and raise a lot of money, and I'm going to win. I'm going to win. But anyway, it's a great, powerful interview. Thanks for him being with me again on the show. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And I hope you continue to follow us. As I mentioned at the first of the show, if you like the show, like us on Facebook. You can also subscribe on YouTube, The Tony Casillas Show. And can't wait to see you next week. As always, have a great week and mucho te amo. My guest this week is a tremendous person. If you follow football like I have for the past, I don't know how many years, and you understand the history of the Dallas Cowboys, and you and at times watched a certain reality show, then you'll know this guy and this man that I'm about to bring in and introduce. Jimmy Johnson was a two-time Super Bowl winning coach for the Dallas Cowboys, won a national championship with the Miami Hurricane, and as a member of the College Football Hall of Fame. But more importantly, there's only been 22 coaches that have been inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That would be the great Jimmy Johnson. Oh, by the way, Coach, people are still asking you to come back and coach the Dallas Cowboys. That's how long it's been. I don't know how many times that's probably been said to you, but after all these years, I still want you back. Hey, first of all, thanks and foremost for joining me.
Well, Tony, really, I owe a lot to a lot of people, including yourself. Going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame is really due to the great play of the outstanding players I had and the great assistant coaches. But really, it's, for all of the success that I had over my career, I went to College Football Hall of Fame because of the players and assistant coaches. Now, I might have had something to do with bringing that group together.
Just also, a little bit.
Hey, Tony, the only person that's ever gone into all three, I'm in the Broadcasting Hall of Fame due to Terry Bradshaw and Kurt Menefee, Michael Strahan, Howie Long, Jay Glazer. And so, in this sport and in our endeavors, we don't ever do anything by ourselves. We do it because of the people that we're surrounded by. And I was fortunate enough to be around a bunch of great players and great assistant coaches.
And I failed to mention, obviously, your broadcasting career with Fox for so many years. You've done you do a great job, and people love your opinion. So congratulations. I mean, your resume is endless. I mean, you start looking at what you've done, not only in your personal life, but as a coach. I mean, it's amazing. But then once you made the transition to broadcasting, you know what? Take me back, because we all saw it unfold on national TV when you found out that you were going to go into the Hall of Fame. And I mean, all the players that have played for you, I mean, we just felt like that we were part of that umbilical cord as far as your emotion. But I mean, and I know you've been asked this so many times, but what was that moment like? Was it like finally winning a Super Bowl or a national championship? I know it had to be different type of feeling, but what did you experience when you found out that you were going in?
Well, Tony, it was a surprise because, of course, I knew, a lot of the people on the selection committee. Bill Belichick and I are really close friends, and Bill said, "Hey, you're in. You're going to get in." I don't have the final numbers, but just listening to everybody on the committee, you're going to get in. So you really don't know until David Baker actually tell you. And so, I thought that, maybe David Baker might come out on the pregame show and make the announcement. Well, he didn't show up on the pregame show. So I said, well, maybe it's not going to happen. And so my producer, Bill Richards, said, Coach, I want you to talk about the Seattle defense, at halftime of the game, the Seattle defense versus the Green Bay Packers, and a particular, route that they ran down the goal line for a touchdown. And he had video for me, and I was all set for that. And of course, we got 35 million people watching us. So you don't want to screw up, explaining the video. So my mind was on this video. I watched it a time or two. I was all set for what I was going to say. And then all of a sudden here at halftime, David Baker walks out. Well, he's a big man. He must weigh 450 pounds at least.
Yeah, I mean, he looks big. TV makes him look bigger, but this dude, yeah, he is. He's he's got a presence to him.
Well, it was overwhelming. When he walked down, I stopped breathing.
Wow.
And so he started telling me about going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which I was expecting. And I tried to talk, and I couldn't talk.
Yeah.
But really, when I finally could get some words out, the first thing I said was, I just think of all the great players and the great assistant coaches I had, and they're the reason I'm going into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it was such the reaction and everything was just so on point. And look, I think they did a great job. It's kind of like keeping a surprise, a surprise birthday or something, like and try to keep it, in secrecy, and to be able to pull it off like that and at the last minute. I had Troy on a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about how you picked him to be part of the presentation. And one of the things he said, and it really makes sense, is that, after you left Dallas, you went into broadcasting, you went to Miami, and then you finally retired. Now you're full into broadcasting full time. He said this is really kind of a moment where in the Dallas Cowboy Nation can really just show their appreciation and see you on the stage and really see you in the moment and really thank you for what you've done. As I mentioned, as I brought you on, and said people still like saying, "Bring Jimmy back." I'm like, that's probably never going to happen, but they want success. But does that resonate with you when Troy says that, and the fans are able to see you in that moment and be able to really thank you going into something so prestigious as the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Well, Tony, Troy and Norv Turner and Dave Wanstead, Tony Wise, Butch Davis, Rich Dalrymple, that crew came down here a few weeks ago, and we laughed and we cut up. In fact, Tony Wise called me this morning. I told Tony I was going to be on with you. He said, "Hey, tell Tony Casillas he's one of my favorite players."
Oh man, I love all those guys. I saw the picture, and I'm sure there's a lot of BS going on, a lot of Heinekens, and just great fellowship.
Well, but we talked and we laughed and we cut up. And, when they left, I texted them. I said, "You know what? We were so driven and so obsessed with winning and getting better, when I was in Dallas, even after the first Super Bowl, my whole thought process was we got to get more players." And so I hit the road, looking at players and evaluating talent, getting ready for the draft. I said, we were so driven back then to get better that we really never slowed down long enough to enjoy, the success. And I said, getting together now at this particular time, it's allowing us to maybe enjoy some of the things that we didn't get to enjoy back then. But we had a great time. It was great memories, great stories, and reliving some of the glory days.
Yeah, that's great. So I got to ask you this. I know you're freaking amazingly competitive when it comes to, playing the game of football, but are you as competitive when it comes to fishing? Is it like if no one catches a fish, no one's going to eat the whole day?
I actually fish by myself most of the time. I don't like to wait on people. I'm very impatient, as my wife would tell you. She frustrates me, to no end, because when I say that we're going to be leaving at 1:00, at 12:30, I start telling her to hurry up.
You'll never change that. What you used to say, if you're 5 minutes early, you're late to the team meeting.
Exactly right. I would close that door 5 minutes before the meeting started, and if you came trying to get into the meeting at the exact time, you weren't going to get in the meeting. So I still operate that way, and so it's I just I'm an impatient man, but fishing wise. Whenever I wake up, I go and start the engines, and normally I'm by myself, so there's no pressure. If I catch fish, fine. If I don't catch fish, it's not the end of the world. It's peaceful for me and relaxing. Now, if I've got people on board, I am competitive and I feel the pressure of catching fish. So it's a little bit more work when I've got people on board, because I do want to catch fish and I am competitive. But when I'm alone, I don't worry about it.
It's like waking up in the morning, having a cup of coffee, no one's up, and it's just you, and you just got this moment to just, decompress and unwind. I mentioned great success in Miami with those teams, and all the transition to the National Football League, the adaptation, what it takes, and to be able to take the transition over from college to the NFL, and one of the things that I knew, but really didn't when I started doing my research and read more on you. I mean, I know a ton about you, but personally, that whole 4-3 defense that you implemented at Miami and then brought it into the National Football League, that it made it vogue. I mean, talk about how the evolution of that started. You had all those great defensive linemen, Jerome Browns, obviously the Russell Marylands, just all these guys that played there, but that whole evolution of being able to create that type of defense.
Well, we started running this style of defense when I was at University of Pittsburgh, and I brought it with me to Oklahoma State, and we made adjustments with it along the way. And actually, when we brought it to Dallas, we played it, of course, at University of Miami. And I remember. George Perlis was the defense coordinator at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we were running this defense. And so I was with him one night, and his secondary coach looked at us and said, "Y'all can't play that kind of defense, at University of Pittsburgh. Here the Steelers coach is telling me this." I said, well, maybe we can't play it, but all I know is we're just beating the hell out of everybody with it. So it was pretty well, you're with us all the way. And what's really interesting, everybody talks about the Tampa 2.
Right.
Well, we were playing cover 2 and 2 invert, what we call switch and double switch.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing that about 10 years earlier, and we brought it into the NFL. And so it's interesting. I was talking to Bill Parcells about it, and Bill says, when you first came in your first year in Dallas, you were playing that switch, double switch, cover 2, 4-3. And he said, Phil Simms looked at me. They were getting ready for your game. Phil Simms looked at me and says, "Hey, they're playing that college coverage." And Parcells looked at him and says, "Let me tell you what, you better study that college coverage because these guys know what in the hell they're doing." And then now everybody, works on it. And Bill Belichick talked to me about it a few years ago. He said, "We run a little bit of a version. We try to run it, but you've got to be totally committed to running it all the time," and which is really difficult for players to run all the adjustments that we had. But yeah, we gave people problems. Well, that's why we led the league in defense. Everybody talks about the triplets, and they were great, great players, as you know. But people don't realize we were number 1 in the NFL defense. That helped those triplets score those touchdowns.
Well, as a defensive player, I remember that, Coach. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And as I mentioned, the transition to the National Football League, and that first year, we know it was a struggle. And then as you just kind of ramped things up and kind of did things your way, built that whole franchise from the ground up with the talent. When did you think that? Because I always thought it was interesting in you the way you sent messages to different people, and for me it was when I went to Dallas, they reinvented me because I was in the 4-3. But when did you realize that there's something here that we're building, and to be able to be in the National Football League after 3-4 years and go to the Super Bowl? When did you decide that the thing was like tilting to the direction that you saw this plan? I mean, was that originally something that you had in mind, like this blueprint that you wanted to accomplish?
Well, obviously we had great success at University of Miami. We lost 2 regular season games in 4 years, and playing a national schedule, as you know. I was with Bobby Bowden and Barry Switzer one day at the Orange Bowl Ring of Honor thing, and Bobby looked over at Barry and said, "Barry," he said, "you realize how many national championships we could have won if it hadn't been this SOB?" The only game Oklahoma and Florida State lost in that 4-year period was to
I know, Coach. Yeah.
But we had great success, and so I go to Dallas, And here I was accustomed to winning all those games.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Landry, one of the greatest coaches of all time. Well, people don't realize he had 3 straight losing seasons. Here were the great coaching staff with great Tom Landry, and they were last in the NFL, 3-13. Well, the reason why they had 3 straight losing seasons is the talent level had gone down so far. So there wasn't a lot of talented players. And, I was with the guys. I said right off the bat, I said, well, Steve Ballore was our quarterback. I traded our starting quarterback to Kansas City, for a 3rd-round pick. And then I released our leading receiver because, he couldn't outrun me. And so I knew that we had to upgrade the talent.
Yeah.
Now, the only player that we had that anybody wanted was Herschel Walker.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
I just said, well, I had drafted Steve Walsh knowing that I was going to trade him. And I was trying to call around all the different, clubs about trading Steve Walsh. That's how it opened the door with Mike Lynn with Minnesota Vikings. And so anyway, I started talking about Herschel Walker, and Ernie, of course, he was with the Cleveland Browns. And Ernie called and he said, would you be interested in trading Herschel Walker? So we actually worked out a deal. But I said, he wanted me to talk to Art Modell that night and finalize it.
Yeah.
He said, well, okay, and then I went to Jerry and I said, Jerry, I've got this great trade, with Cleveland Browns, but I think maybe we can improve it. So I started calling around. I actually had him call Rankin Smith and a couple of owners. And I called Mike Lynn and I told him what I had on the table for Cleveland. And so Mike sent me a fax, and Mike thought he was going to, really kind of pull the wool over this college coach's eyes. He sent me 5 players and that really he could do without. Jesse Solomon had a hurt knee. Isaac Holt was an older player. David Howard was a try-hard older player. He could do away with those 5 players. And he thought that we would fall in love with them and we wouldn't get the draft picks because you either had to get the players or the picks. Well, I knew right off the bat I was just going to keep the picks. I didn't want the players. I wanted the picks. But I actually orchestrated at a later date to be able to keep a couple of those players plus the picks. And so we kind of stockpiled some of these draft picks. We made 51 trades in 5 years because we knew the talent wasn't, good enough. And the only way I told our coaching staff, I said, guys, if we do the old, let's take the best player available, I said, we'll be fired after 3 years because there's no way you can turn around this team taking the best player available. And so we stockpiled these draft picks. We ended up getting a bunch of good players. Now, a lot of teams have had picks, but it's not, getting picks. That's not the key. The key is picking the right players. And obviously, we knew the college players. We picked the right players, and we started winning. That's one reason why, with all those young players, we were the youngest team in the league when we won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But anyway, we upgraded the talent, Tony, and that's why we won games.
I mean, how surprised were you, though, when you said they're actually going to do this deal? Because when you look at hindsight, as you mentioned, you still got to go get the players, right? But how surprised you were, like, we're going to get all that for one player, and that being Herschel Walker?
You know what? People point to that one trade, and obviously it helped us. But
right.
The end result was about 3 or 4 players.
Yeah.
We got 3 or 4 players for a guy that was a Pro Bowler. Like Steve Walsh, we got a 1, 2, and a 3 for Steve Walsh.
Yeah.
Now, that caused a few problems because I had to walk such a tightrope that first year. We weren't going to win any games anyway. We only won 1 game. And so I wasn't concerned about it. I started bringing players in and out, just evaluating talent.
Mm-hmm.
But I really couldn't go to Troy and say, hey, you're our guy forever and ever, because that would hurt Steve Walsh's trade value. And Troy was upset about it. He wasn't happy at all.
Yeah.
And obviously I couldn't go to Steve Walsh and say, you're our guy, because I knew that Troy was really our franchise quarterback. But after I traded Steve, then I was able to bond that relationship with Troy. So that first year was difficult. And it was difficult for one reason. We didn't have a lot of players. But, the other thing, Tony, we had such a great assistant coach, a group of assistant coaches.
Yeah.
Of course, Wanstead and Butch and, Tony Wise. Tony Wise never gets the credit for what, he did.
Great coach.
A lot of people look at, the offensive line back then and said maybe the greatest offensive line in NFL history. Well, there's no first and second rounders in that group.
Mm-hmm.
We had a free agent, Mark Tuen, a defensive player that we moved to left tackle. We had Nate Newton, the previous staff said, hey, get rid of him. He's too fat. We had an undersized offensive guard, a third-round pick from Pitt. And I talked to Tony. I said, can you make him into a center? He said, Coach, he said, you draft him. He said, I'll move him to center. I can make him into a center. Ended up being a great player for us. And then, we had Kevin Gogan, a seventh-round pick that we moved to guard. And we had Eric Williams, a third-round pick, from Central State of Ohio at right tackle. There's no first and second rounders in there.
Yeah.
Bunch of free agents, bunch of third rounders. But Tony Wise developed that bunch. And just an example of the great assistant coaches that we had.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that doesn't get the headlines, but I personally was privy to that, and Tony Wise and all those players, and I think that's the greatness of what you're able to do. Yeah, the message that you send sometimes is a little harsh as players, but you're able to find and navigate and find those guys that you don't have to go out, because we all know, this coach, that it's not made up of first and second round picks. It's all those other people, other guys are undrafted or in the latter part of the evaluation of the draft. So I think that's really, when people talk about it, it's kind of misleading, because you did have the assistant coaches who were able to mold these guys and make them future Hall of Famers.
Tony, I think another thing is, it's a matter of putting together the entire team. We talk about the triplets being great players, and we talk about us being number one in the NFL on defense. But it was just the combination of the whole thing. A lot of the players that we picked were not necessarily, household names. Just like, for instance, we did some things a little bit different. We brought in, linebackers that could run, great speed. And then we had a rotation, such as yourself, in the defensive line.
Yeah.
People back then, they didn't rotate the defensive line.
Yeah.
But, just like Russell Maryland, we worked out a deal. Russell was going to probably be picked in the fourth or fifth pick. But, maybe even later, we worked out a deal with his agent, Lee Steinberger, that if we ended up taking him number one, he'd make fourth or fifth, pick money. But because I knew Russell, I knew the type of person he was, and I wanted that rotation in the defensive line. Yourself, Jamie Jones, Russell Maryland, of course, picking up Charles Haley, to help us on the outside rush, Tolbert, all those guys. It really helped having the rotation, and people didn't do it back then. But we did some things a little bit differently than what the NFL was accustomed to doing.
Yeah, I think that you made it vogue with that rotation, and then it's a lot easier said than done, because you still got to go out and get those players, and there was no salary cap, so it made it. But still, I just remember that it was like a boxing match, a UFC fight. You start at the beginning, at the very end, you got fresh guys. It's really just hammering home haymakers, but just a tremendous. And obviously, just the way it kind of snowballed. I mean, I remember the game of the NFC division game against Detroit, and it pivoted into the next year, and then obviously won back-to-back Super Bowls. I think when I got you on, I was going to bring up a couple of moments and the way you used to motivate. And I saw one. You and Troy did an interview. You did a show, and you were talking about coming back from the Washington game, and we lost, and no one. We couldn't eat. The players couldn't. But I got one for you, Coach. I don't know if you remember this. I don't know if it was 92 or 93 during training camp, during the freaking, we were trying to survival the fittest. And the special teams the week before in the preseason game were horrible. So the next day we show up and you're like, okay, everybody down the goal line, we're all going to run down on the kickoff team. Do you remember that?
Right.
And everyone. And I'm like, like, Coach, you're nuts, man. But then I kind of understood. I look back, I'm like, he knew exactly what he was doing. I was one of those great Jimmy Johnson, like, Coach, what are you thinking?
Well, yeah, just different things. I was.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that?
I remember that. And I remember what Troy was talking about too. I mean, like I said, you're always looking. Okay, how can you make this team better?
Right.
You mentioned the Detroit game. After Detroit, if people will look at the comments I made in the Detroit locker room after it's our third year. We beat Chicago in the playoffs, and then we lost to Detroit in the playoffs. And in the locker room, I said, we've got to improve our pass defense and pass rush. Well, that's when I traded for Charles Haley and drafted Kevin Smith and Darren Woodson for the defensive backfield. So that upgraded. We went from middle of the pack to number one defense. And then you mentioned Troy's deal. I said, that's when we had the playoffs already wrapped up. And we're coming, we went and flopped around, as you know, against Washington and lost a game we shouldn't have lost, even though it didn't hurt us in the standings.
Right.
And, I told the flight attendant, you can serve the meal. And I said, sit down. They don't. Well, once that.
But I think we still drank beer on that flight, Coach. Or, no,
y'all were probably going back. Walking back there. Remember, I always walk back.
Oh, yeah.
And, if we lost the game, you better not have a smile on your face or be playing cards. But now, if we won, you could do anything you wanted to do. I mean, you could celebrate. But so y'all didn't eat. But the next day, Wanstead came in my office and said, Coach, he said, God, weren't you a little bit tough on them? Really not even serving them a meal on the way home. That's a long trip. I said, Dave, I really, obviously I want them to respect me and all that, but they don't have to like me. All I want to make a point that when we lose, I want them to be sick to their stomach. I want them to be upset. I want them to be mad. I want them to be nauseated. I don't want them to accept losing. And then we win, you can do anything, no holds barred. But running those sprints, when we, one thing about special teams, that's why I involved our entire football team on special teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of reaction. And so that's why I had y'all sprint down the field and maybe react to a punt returner, to be able to go laterally and to make a football move type thing. And plus, it was a great conditioning drill, too. And maybe y'all were upset at me. I'm sure you were, because you were trying to survive in training camp. But it was a great conditioner, and it was making a point. Hey, we got to upgrade our special teams, and we got to play a lot better than what we did.
Well, I can say this: special teams are better the next week. So the message resonated.
Get better, Tony.
And I just remember the practice, and it's great to tell the generation now the stories of when we back in the 90s when we played, and I just remember the intensity. And although for me, when I came from Atlanta, to me it reinvented my career, and I'm like, man, I love the whole dynamic, because if a coach is going to have that philosophy, and this, if that's the way they're going to coach you, they're going to coach you hard. At the end of the day, there's got to be a goal that we're going to be able to achieve. And I think everyone realized that. And I've heard you mention it so many times, how the players were so unselfish. It didn't matter who it was, because in a way, the Jimmy way that you dealt with them, they got the same message as the other guy.
Well, like I said, when you have success, there's glory for us all. And, like for instance, Troy Aikman, if we would have thrown the football every down, Troy could have put up huge numbers throwing the football. But we had a great team. We knew we had a great defense, and there was no reason to really put ourselves in jeopardy and possibly turn the ball over. So we were, pretty conservative on offense. But, as a team, we could always dominate. People say, well, Troy didn't have a whole lot of comebacks. Well, he didn't have a whole lot of comebacks for the simple reason we didn't get behind.
Right. I mean, don't you love that? How you have to validate that?
If you're playing great defense and you're running the football and you're not turning it over, you don't have to come from behind. But we had a great team philosophy, and like you say, players were very unselfish. They weren't concerned about how many yards they threw for, or how many catches they had, or how many tackles they had. As long as the team won, we were all happy.
Yeah, obviously you went to Miami, and then obviously you were there for 6 years in Miami.
3 or 4. I was there 4 years. We went to playoffs 3 straight years.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. But I mean, that's pretty a great success there. And you had one of the greats here in Dan Marino. Obviously, he was kind of in the twilight of his career, but still had the number one offense. Defense is kind of where you needed to. Number one defense.
Defense. Yep.
Okay, and defense. Offense, maybe not, but I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
So we mentioned Troy Aikman and Dan Marino. Those two guys in their prime, if you had to pick one of those quarterbacks to start your team, who would that be? And look, I know it's one of those questions. I know, but I mean, think about that. Think about Dan Marino, how great he was, and went to one Super Bowl and didn't win.
Yeah, here's the problem. When I took over the job with the Dolphins, Dan had so many surgeries. He had really a difficult time moving around, and in fact, was hurt almost every year that I was with the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
First year, hurt his. I think maybe his Achilles tendon. He hurt his shoulder one year. Missed 6 or 7 games. So he missed time the entire time, because by the time I got there, he was just so beat up. It was difficult for him to perform, at a high level. And we did lead the league in defense, and Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas and Patrick Surtain and Terrell Buckley.
You had some tremendous talent on that defensive. Yeah,
we had some great defensive players, but really we struggled on offense a little bit. Like I said, we won a couple of playoff games. The only disappointment is we didn't win a Super Bowl, and that was a disappointment for me, because we had a great owner in Wayne Huizinga, and he was willing to do whatever.
All right.
But we ran its course, and then I said, hey, I want to get with my family and retire.
So I just assumed that you would go with Troy.
Oh, I think I go with Troy because I was healthy and he was the best. If I'd have had Dan at his very best, when he was healthy, maybe I'd gone with Dan, but I never saw Dan at his best.
Yeah, I understand that. And one of the things you mentioned is that you decided that you were going to get out of football and spend more time with your family. And I just know the way you coached, it was full throttle. The grindstone and everything that went into your energy and just all of your life. Was that part of the reason? Because just being able to get away from the game, you've been in it for so long, and it's something that really emotionally drains on you, because as a coach, I mean, that's your life, and sometimes family is second.
A lot of coaches could delegate and, go home, at dinner time or at night. I couldn't do that. If there was a job to be done, I was going to work until we got the job done. And I always felt like I could outwork people and make us better. The other thing is I was in charge of personnel. And so, a lot of coaches aren't that involved with personnel, so they have an off season. Well, like I said earlier, as soon as we won that first Super Bowl, I was on the road looking at players again, getting ready for the draft. And so doing personnel and coaching, it's a round the clock, 24 hours, 12 months out of the year. And I spent very little time with my family. My 2 sons both played football. I never saw either one of them play a game. My youngest son struggled for about 10 years, and now he's just doing fantastic. He has a couple of rehab centers, a very successful one there in St. Petersburg, Tranquil Shores, and he's now opening up one outside of Austin, Cedar Ranch. And so he's doing fantastic now. And then my oldest son, his wife was CEO of Airbnb, and she retired, and they're living outside of Austin. So my family's doing great, but it hit me, when I was in Dallas, and then I said, well, maybe I can go and make another run, go back with the Dolphins. But then my last year, my mother passed away, and I went to her funeral, and I said, I just missed so much time with my family. I said, I've just got to retire. I can't work around the clock like I used to, and so that's why I retired from football.
Yeah, it makes you think about those type of things. So I got to ask you this. I think there's no telling how many times you've been asked. So the whole contentions, whenever you decided to leave Dallas and the breakup with Jerry, how much was that of you and how much of that was Jerry? You said that you coached there for 5 years and it's kind of like your energy and like, I'm done with it. But how much of that was that you guys just couldn't coexist and it kind of ran its course?
Oh, I think more than anything else, Jerry and I both knew that, I wanted to move on. I wanted to move back to South Florida. I loved living in South Florida when I was at University of Miami. In fact, even before the second Super Bowl, I'd bought a home in the Keys, the Florida Keys, down Kahiki Harbor, and so I knew that I was going to move on and move to South Florida. So it really wasn't. Jerry and I had a great run, just like what Jerry said before we ever went to Dallas. I remember like it was yesterday. I was in his SUV there in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he said, Jimmy, listen, I'll handle all the finances. You handle all the football. We'll go back to back and we'll make sports history. Well, that's what we did.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I got great respect for Jerry Jones. Smartest businessman I've ever been around. He's very passionate about the Cowboys. He worked around the clock for them. And so, I got a tremendous amount of respect for Jerry.
Yeah, that's amazing that you're able to have that. You know what? When we look at the Cowboys and your whole coaching legacy, how do you want people to remember you? I know that's kind of cliche at times, and people say, "Well, how do you want to be remembered?" But if someone ever, it brings your name up, what do you want people to really remember? The type of coach, the type of person you were.
Oh, Tony, really, it's not a concern of mine. They can think whatever they want to about me.
I know, but that's right.
As long as I'm at peace right here, I know what we were able to accomplish. I'm very, very proud of what we were able to accomplish. And people can form their own opinion of me. That's their business. That's not mine.
Yeah, you can't really worry about that. And I much respect. Last one when it related to the biggest honor that you can get is being inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but not being in the Cowboys Ring of Honor. Is that kind of like a side note now that you made it to the top of the mountain when it comes to recognition of what you've done in your career? Does it bother you any at all, the fact that you're not being recognized as one of the guy that built the franchise, the ground up, and won all the Super Bowls? And who knows, if you would have stayed a couple more years, how many other rings they would have won? But I mean, does that really matter to you, Coach?
Yeah, Tony, I think the media and you guys are more concerned about that than I am.
I'm not concerned about it. I just think it's a great question because I think your ass should be in. That's what I mean. I don't have that. I'm just making a bold, just a clear statement. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't be in.
Jerry's told me numerous times he was going to put me in the Ring of Honor. And like I said, I'm not really concerned about it. Whenever Jerry has a good feeling and wants to do it, that's fine with me.
All right. So I do a couple of segments on my show, kind of a fun version of the show. We'll get you out here real quick. We appreciate it. The first one is called X's and O's, and X's and O's is presented by Dr. Matt Chalmers of Chalmers Wellness in Frisco, Texas. All right, Coach, I'm just going to ask you this, like we're sitting out on the boat having a couple of Heinekens. I read where you said being on Survivor was more stressful than winning Super Bowls and championships. And I love those shows, by the way. I love the one Naked and Afraid. Did you ever consider going on that one? You seen that one?
Absolutely. That was a lot more difficult.
But your experience, I mean, you were the one that was like the guy that people had to worry about, that they voted you off. But what was that whole experience like? I mean, I got more respect. That's almost like us going through training camp in freaking Austin. What was your perception of that?
Well, I love watching the show. It's gotten a lot easier, now. In the early days, it really was a survival show. We had one little bit of rice every day. I lost 18 pounds just in a week and a half. And
so how produced is it? I mean, is it as hardcore as what you see on TV? I said, how produced is it? Is it as hardcore as that we watch on TV?
It's actually more difficult because you have a lockdown period to where if the camera's not running, you can't talk at all, and you can't because they don't want you to form an alliance, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot of times where you're in a truck going on a 2-hour drive. You can't talk. You're all hot, sweaty, bugs biting you. You go into the Challenger or something.
Wow, that's tough.
The lack of food didn't bother me that much, and losing all the weight. Getting, just absolutely no sleep. You don't have a change of clothes. You're soaking wet. It's pouring down rain. Bugs are biting you, and you're trying to sleep on some bamboo. So I couldn't get any sleep. But when it came time, they were going to vote people out. I said, hey, I'm not going to be offended. I'm ready to go get on the couch and have a cold beer. So. But I enjoyed the show. It was a great adventure.
But the fact that you went on there was just, those shows are amazing. All right, so favorite fishing story. You're in the Keys, but if you have one particular story where whatever you caught or this experience you've had on the water, well, what is that?
Well, I have caught and released, 5 blue marlin fishing alone. My first blue marlin, I fought it, for about 2.5, 3 hours out there by
yourself?
By myself, running the boat, probably about a 300-pound blue marlin. And actually the blue marlin, normally you release a blue marlin, just the sport of it. But this blue marlin it died in the process, couldn't revive it. So I got it on the boat and we drug it through the door. And it was like 10 o'clock in the morning by the time I finished because I'd gone out at daylight. And I sucked down about 3 Heineken lights on the way home and called my buddy and said, you got to see what I caught. But since then, I've caught 4 more and released them. That's probably my best fishing story is my first blue marlin fishing alone.
Man, that's amazing to do that yourself. I caught my biggest fish was a yellowfin tuna. It's 100 pounds, and it kicked my rear end. But it wasn't just me. That's fantastic. I'm sure you've had some people that ask you to support. But if you had a fantasy dinner reservation you'd make for 4, whether dead or alive, who would that be?
Yeah, number one, I very rarely go out to dinner. If anything, I'm going to go to lunch with just my wife and I to where we're not bothered by people. Yeah. People lose their inhibitions at night when you're having dinner. So I don't go out to dinner. So I'd probably beg off. There's nobody I'd really care about having dinner with, to be honest with you.
So how do you like your fish? You like sushi? How do you do, how do you prepare your fish?
My wife, I don't do any cooking. I don't barbecue.
You just catch it. Right?
And normally she'll have fried fish. Yeah, I go back to my growing up days. Everything was fried back then.
Next question. This is an easy one. Heineken or tequila?
Heineken Light, 50 less calories than the regular Heineken. And then I very rarely, probably once every 3 or 4 years might have hard liquor. So it's Heineken Light or nothing.
That's all. All right, our last segment with the great Jimmy Johnson is Bensworthy. Bensworthy is presented by the University of Oklahoma's Work Center program. All right, Coach. doesn't sound like you watch a lot of TV. I mean, you may be binging but over this whole pandemic. By the way, how did you navigate through the whole the year and a half and still the pandemic? I mean, how hard was it and challenging was that?
Well, the only thing it was a little bit challenging was doing Fox NFL Sunday, because normally I fly to Los Angeles, and so with the COVID-19. They set up a camera here in my office, and so I did the show, from home. Made it a lot easier because I do the show and then go into the den and watch all the ball games.
Yeah.
So I have to be going out to LA occasionally this year.
Yeah. So how about you? Anything you like to watch on TV? You read a book? I mean, like you go to, because that's all we do is watch Netflix and Hulu.